Hey guys, tonight we ease our tired feet onto a dirt road just as the sun slips behind a line of crooked medieval cottages, leaving everything stained in that purply dusk that makes you wonder if you really should have left the last village at all. The air is cooler than you expected, nipping at your sleeves, and you can already hear your stomach complaining. Always helpful, like that friend who reminds you the movie started 10 minutes ago. You're a poor traveller in a world that isn't exactly designed for your comfort or your survival. And honestly, you probably won't survive this if you keep wandering without a plan. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening right now, tell me in the comments where you are and what time it is. I love seeing the little map of sleepy listeners stretching across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge along the rutted dirt path as the last sliver of daylight melts away, leaving you with only the faintest silver glow from a rising moon. Your breath fogs lightly, just enough to remind you that autumn isn't being shy this year. The medieval road under your boots is uneven, all stones and gullies, like the world's worst attempt at a free massage. Travellers in this era complain constantly about these roads, and for good reason. Historians like to point out that unless you happen to be walking on an old Roman road, those marvellously overbuilt highways, the typical medieval path was more suggestion than infrastructure. Historians still argue whether some of these roads were ever actually maintained, or if they simply survived out of stubbornness. You keep shifting the strap of your little cloth bag higher on your shoulder. It contains exactly 3 things: a chunk of rough bread, a wooden spoon, and a small piece of wool you pretend is a blanket when the nights get cold enough. Luxury items, truly. A crow watches you from a leaning oak, giving you that judgmental bird stare, as if it expected you to bring snacks. The road at dusk is usually the hour when travellers start making decisions. You've seen the warnings carved onto posts back at the crossroads, little knife symbols and scribbles meant to scare off the timid. Bandits like to work at night, partly because darkness makes people clumsy, and partly because nighttime has excellent ambience if you're trying to be menacing. So you weigh your options, push ahead and risk running into trouble, or find a place, any place, to settle down. Medieval peasants like you rarely had coins to buy proper lodging. The inns that did exist catered more to merchants, soldiers, or people who weren't carrying exactly 3 possessions in a bag shaped like disappointment. Your boots sink slightly into a patch of mud as the light fades further. Somewhere ahead, a dog barks. Just one sharp bark. The universal canine announcement for, "I saw a shape, and I'm suspicious of it." You can't tell whether it's the good kind of village dog or the kind that proceeds to bite your leg, because it finds your existence personally offensive. A cold wind brushes the back of your neck, carrying the smell of damp earth and distant wood smoke. Wood smoke means people, and people mean roofs, and roofs. If you negotiate well, smile politely, or just look sufficiently exhausted, might mean a place to sleep. Medieval peasants often relied on the goodwill of strangers, not because anyone was particularly generous, but because everyone understood how harsh travel could be. There's even a quirky custom in some regions where households felt compelled to offer a traveller a corner of the floor in exchange for a bit of news or gossip. You don't have much gossip, but you could always make something up. Yes, I did hear rumours of a goat that learned to climb ladders. Close enough. Your feet ache from the uneven road. All around you, the countryside folds into gentle hills, with clusters of trees like dark smudges against the fading sky. You pass a small milestone, just a crudely carved stone marker that seems to say, "Congratulations, you've gone this far, but don't expect applause." You rub your hands together for warmth. Nights get cold fast out here, especially without proper shelter. That little tuft of wool in your bag isn't going to do much. It's more emotional support fabric than insulation. A pair of travellers once said that medieval roads were busiest at dawn and late morning, when visibility was good and threats were fewer. By dusk, most sensible people were already indoors. You, however, are not currently in the sensible category. Your stomach growls again, louder this time, almost as if trying to attract predators on purpose. You tear off a tiny piece of your bread and chew thoughtfully. It tastes like it has emotional baggage. Ahead, the road curves just enough to hide whatever lies beyond. A little shiver of anticipation or fear, it's hard to tell the difference sometimes, runs through you. The darkness feels thicker, the shadows moving with every flicker of moonlight. But you keep going, because this is medieval travel, half determination, half regret. The first sign of human habitation reaches you in the softest way, not a sound, but a glow. A warm, wavering light spills over the bend, probably from some household's tallow candle or hearth fire. You feel relief wash over you, and you quicken your pace. You're not guaranteed a bed, but even being near other people at night brings a sense of safety. Still, you know the reality. Poor travellers often slept in places nobody else wanted. Sometimes that meant sharing space with animals. Sometimes it meant squeezing into a spot so drafty it felt like you were sleeping in a wind tunnel. That's the life. Another gust of cold wind nudges you, almost like a reminder that night is officially in charge now. You glance up at the sky, stars just beginning to pepper the darkness, quietly mocking your lack of shelter. It's fine. Everything's fine. You've slept in worse places. You once slept beside a cart rut so deep you worried about falling into it if you turned over too fast. Perspective helps. The dog barks again, closer this time, and your pulse quickens. It could be a warning, or it could just be announcing your arrival like some unofficial village receptionist. Either way, you keep moving toward that promising glow, boots squelching through soft mud, breath frosting in front of you, every sense tingling with the hope that the road ahead won't deliver anything worse than cold feet. You follow that warm glow until it settles into something more distinct, a faint halo around a wooden gate. As you draw closer, you realize it's the entrance to a tiny hamlet, exactly the kind of place where every cottage leans, as though it's tired of pretending to be upright. The gate itself is little more than two timbers tied together with fraying rope, but in the medieval world, even a flimsy gate signals authority, boundaries, and someone inside who believes they control who gets in and who doesn't. Lucky for you, you're arriving at the hour when gatekeepers begin to decide if they're feeling charitable or grumpy. Historically, village gates weren't always locked, but in many regions, especially near borderlands, villages closed up at dusk to keep out thieves, wolves, or people like you who simply look suspiciously exhausted. You approach slowly because rushing a medieval gatekeeper is how you win the special prize of getting yelled at while being poked with a stick. A lantern swings from a peg, casting golden light across a patch of ground where someone has clearly swept earlier. Proof that even in small villages people liked things tidy-ish. You stop just outside the wooden frame and clear your throat in a polite, "Please don't throw rocks at me" kind of way. A figure appears behind the gate, a broad-shouldered man wearing a wool tunic and the expression of someone whose bedtime has been disrupted. He narrows his eyes at you, squinting through the gloom, sizing up your clothes, your bag, and probably your general aura of, "I carry only breadcrumbs and poor decisions." Gatekeepers in the medieval sense were unofficial but influential. They weren't always trained guards. Sometimes they were simply villagers assigned the role because they were large, loud, or not currently injured. This one looks like he's 2 out of the 3. "Travelling late, are you?" he grumbles, pushing the gate open just enough to lean on it. His voice sounds like gravel that decided to pursue a singing career. You nod, trying to appear harmless. "Road was longer than expected," you say, which is medieval code for "please don't leave me. Outside with the wolves." He snorts. "Road's always longer than expected." A mainstream fact slips into your mind. Medieval distances weren't measured precisely for common folk. People used phrases like "a day's walk," or "half a day if you're in a hurry and your shoes don't betray you." Historians still argue whether poor travellers truly understood mileage, or if everyone simply guessed and hoped the destination appeared before morale collapsed completely. The gatekeeper angles his lantern toward your bag. "Got coin?" he asks. This isn't rude, it's administrative. Some villages charge tiny entrance fees, especially if you plan to sleep inside the walls. You hesitate, because your coin purse contains 2 wildly disappointing pennies and the lingering hope that you might not have to spend them. "Not much," you admit, "but I can help with chores." Medieval villages loved chores. There were chores for food, chores for lodging, chores for chores. Offering to help was practically the poor traveller's currency. The gatekeeper scratches his beard, assessing whether your arms look even remotely capable of lifting something. "Maybe," he says, then gestures at a tiny wooden box beside the gate, really more a crate than a box. Strangers sometimes rest there, keeps you dry anyway. The crate is about the size of a large doghouse and looks equally inviting, but you've slept in worse, Remember the cart rut, so you nod gratefully. Before you settle into your new upscale wooden rectangle suite, you ask the gatekeeper a cautious question. Any trouble on the road nearby? Just in case he says something like, "Oh, yes, do avoid the roaming tax collectors. They bite." He shrugs. "Few merchants passed through earlier. Said they saw lights in the old watchtower last night." He lowers his voice slightly. "That tower's been abandoned for decades." You feel a shiver. A quirky local tidbit if you ever heard one. Medieval villagers often had stories about abandoned structures. Everything from ghosts to smugglers to that one goat who climbed ladders. The watchtower doesn't concern you at the moment, but the idea of mysterious lights never sits comfortably. You glance behind him into the hamlet. The cluster of cottages seems peaceful. Just a few shapes outlined by moonlight. You hear the cluck of sleepy chickens and the faint creak of a windmill turning lazily. Most lights are already out. Villagers went to bed early, partly because candle wax was valuable, partly because waking up before dawn to do everything by hand required an unholy amount of energy. The gatekeeper lifts the lantern again. You staying outside or coming in for a bite? His tone is neutral, but the fact that he's even asking suggests he doesn't find you threatening. Food inside sounds heavenly, except if you enter the village proper, you risk being assigned the famous medieval surprise chores. Last time you accepted free food, someone made you stir a cauldron of pottage for 45 minutes straight. Your arm still remembers. "I'll stay by the gate," you say politely. "I'll be gone by first light." Gatekeepers liked that promise. Fewer strangers meant fewer headaches. He nods and steps back, closing the gate behind him, though not latching it completely. That's a gesture of mild trust, or perhaps mild laziness. You sit on the ground next to the crate, letting your back rest against its rough wooden side. The night air hits you again, sharper now, and you tuck your arms around yourself. You watch the lantern light fade as the gatekeeper disappears into the village. The sounds settle into a pleasant quiet. Wind brushing through thatch roofs, a rooster confusedly crowing because roosters don't understand clocks, and the distant hum of insects. You slide your little piece of wool over your shoulders, pretending it's much larger. It smells faintly of sheep, which is normal in this century. Everything smells faintly of sheep. Your eyelids grow heavy, and despite the cold, a drowsy comfort creeps in. You survived the roads at dusk. Now all you need to do is make it through the night without the crate collapsing, a chicken roosting on your head, or the watchtower ghost deciding to make personal introductions. You don't stay asleep for long. A stiff breeze sneaks through the gap beneath the crate, lifting the edge of your wool scrap like it's trying to check if you're still alive. You curl tighter, blinking yourself awake, and realize the night hasn't fully settled in yet. There's still that faint amber glow from somewhere deeper in the hamlet, probably an alehouse stubbornly refusing to close, and with that thought comes a new one. Warmth. Specifically, hearth warmth. Specifically the kind peasants like you dream about while sleeping in crates. You push yourself up, brushing straw dust off your tunic, and consider your options. The gatekeeper didn't forbid you from wandering inside. He just didn't encourage it either. But warmth is warmth, and an alehouse is usually the medieval equivalent of a convenience store for tired travellers. Loud, smoky, questionably sticky, but full of human beings who won't let you freeze to death. So you slip through the gate's unlatched opening, moving quietly enough that even the chickens ignore you. The dirt paths inside the hamlet wind between low cottages whose shutters are firmly bolted. You hear only distant murmurs, a baby fussing, someone snoring like they swallowed a small trombone, a dog rearranging itself into the exact shape required to hog the entire doorway. And then, there it is, the alehouse, the only building with faint light spilling cheerfully through its warped wooden shutters. You approach the crooked door, which looks as though it's lost every argument it ever had with the wind. A painted sign hangs above it, a crude drawing of a mug that could also, possibly, be a boot. Medieval signage was often interpretive. You push the door open carefully, letting out a breath you didn't realize you were holding. Instant warmth washes over you like a blanket fresh off a sunbeam. The smell hits next. Ale, smoke, damp wool, and something frying that might be onions or might be something pretending very hard to be onions. A wide hearth glows at the far end, flames licking hungrily around a log that looks 3 sizes too big for the fireplace. A handful of villagers sit around rough-hewn tables talking in low, sleepy voices. This is a blessing. Alehouses were among the few places where poor travellers sometimes found a corner to sleep in exchange for pennies or sweeping spilled ale. A mainstream fact, medieval alehouses doubled as community centres, places where villagers gathered not just to drink but to hear news, complain about taxes, or argue about whether the miller was cheating everyone again this season. Historians still argue whether alehouse floors were more unsanitary than average medieval spaces, or if they simply seemed that way, because spilled ale preserved the memory of stickiness for centuries. You step inside, rubbing your hands to warm them. The alehouse keeper, a short woman with arms as tough as rope, glances up from wiping mugs with a cloth that seems to be engaging in a personal rebellion. She looks you over with quick, practiced eyes. "Travelling late?" she asks, echoing the gatekeeper's earlier judgment, but with a softer tone. Her voice suggests she's seen plenty of wanderers like you, half frozen, half hungry, and wholly shaped like someone who wants a warm spot to collapse in. You nod. "Just looking for a dry place to rest my feet." This is medieval code for, "Please let me sit near the fire before I turn into a decorative ice sculpture." She lifts her chin toward an empty corner near the hearth. "You can sit there, but no sleeping unless you buy something or help clean before closing. House rules." "Fair enough. You could sweep the place in your sleep." "Well, actually, sweeping in your sleep is exactly what she wants to prevent, but you get the idea." You shuffle toward the corner, passing a group of men arguing over whether the local reeve is secretly meeting with merchants to raise grain prices. One man insists he has proof, though his proof appears to be, "I have a feeling." Very authoritative. Someone else swears they saw strange lights near the church last night. You nearly tell them about the watchtower lights the gatekeeper mentioned, but decide against it. They already have enough fuel for 3 conspiracy theories without your help. Near the hearth, the warmth is glorious. So glorious you briefly consider proposing marriage to the fire itself. You settle onto a low bench, stretching your feet toward the flames, letting the heat chase away the stiffness in your legs. The alehouse keeper brings you a small cup of weak ale, the kind that tastes like someone whispered flavour at it from across the room. You're grateful anyway. As you sip, your eyes wander across the room. A wiry man is plucking at a fiddle, testing notes like he's trying to remember which ones belong to actual songs. A young woman near him rolls her eyes, saying, "If you wake the baby again, I'm throwing you outside with the pigs." He tries to look offended, but the pigs outside probably sleep better than he does. You take another sip of ale, letting its gentle warmth spread through you. Your body relaxes, your muscles unwinding from the cold of the road. The flicker of the hearth makes shadows dance across the floorboards, revealing how uneven they truly are. A quirky tidbit comes to mind. Some medieval alehouses used rushes or straw on the floors not just for comfort, but to soak up spills and smells. Fresh layers were added occasionally, while old layers were, well, they were sometimes just left to marinate. You glance down at the floor and sincerely hope this establishment uses the occasionally refreshed method. A man at the next table shifts to make room for you, nodding politely. "Long road?" he asks. "Too long," you reply, trying to find a spot to sleep wherever someone doesn't mind. He chuckles knowingly. "Aye, we've all done it. Slept in lofts, barns, under carts, once even in a cabbage patch." He pauses. "Smelled like cabbage for days." You smile. He finishes his drink, then adds thoughtfully, "Better here than outside tonight. Cold wind's bad luck." He leans in, lowering his voice. "Some say it carries spirits from the old watchtower." Ah, yes. That rumour is making the rounds faster than a medieval cold. Historians still argue whether villagers genuinely believed in wandering spirits, or if these stories simply helped them cope with the dark, unpredictable world around them. You nurse the last of your ale, savouring the lingering sweetness that's more imagined than real. The keeper eventually calls out the nightly closing routine, and you stand ready to earn your place. She hands you a broom, and not the nice kind, but one that looks like a shrub tied to a stick. You sweep the floor, pushing aside dust, crumbs, a surprising amount of straw, and one very confused beetle. It's tiring, but it's warm work, and warmth is priceless to a traveller like you. When you finish, the keeper nods approvingly. "Corner by the hearth's yours till dawn," she says, already extinguishing lanterns. Grateful, you curl up on the floor, the fire's fading glow painting the room in soft orange. Your eyes droop, your body sighs. And slowly, gently, You drift into the kind of sleep only exhaustion can deliver. Tomorrow you'll have to move on again, but tonight you're warm. Morning arrives not with sunshine, but with the sound of someone dropping a bucket. It clatters across the alehouse floor like a medieval alarm clock set to aggressive. You jerk awake, momentarily unsure where you are, until the familiar ache in your shoulders reminds you, hearth corner, borrowed warmth, broom sweeping wages. A woman bustles past carrying another bucket, this one blessedly upright, and gives you a nod that means, "Up you get, traveller, this isn't a bed and breakfast." You stretch, feeling every knot in your spine complain individually. Sleeping on a wooden floor warmed by a dying fire is an upgrade compared to your usual accommodations, but it still leaves you shaped like a pretzel someone sat on. You murmur thanks to the alehouse keeper, gather your things, and step out into the crisp morning air. The sun peeks over the thatched roofs, painting everything in that pale gold that makes even muddy patches look almost scenic. You take a deep breath. Today, the road continues, but so does your quest for sleep. Real, meaningful sleep. The kind that doesn't involve sweeping beetles or negotiating with drafty crates. Your feet lead you toward the edge of the hamlet, where a small farmstead sits just beyond the fields. Barns, in the medieval sleep economy, are surprisingly valuable real estate. A barn loft, if you can negotiate one, is warmer than the open road, softer than stone, and usually free if you're willing to perform a little work, or a lot of work. Medieval households didn't really do a little. You approach the farmhouse cautiously. A pair of chickens strut past you with the swagger of birds who own everything they step on. One pauses to glare at you with pure poultry judgment. You step around them, careful not to challenge their authority. The farmer appears in the doorway, wiping his hands on a rag that looks like it's been through 12 wars. He's tall, sun-browned, and watching you with an expression halfway between suspicion and boredom. He sizes you up in 3 seconds flat. Your boots, your bag, your general aura of semi-defeated resilience. "Morning," he says. "Travelling?" His voice is as rough as the fieldstones lining his yard. You nod. "Looking for a place to rest. Maybe a loft if there's space. I can work for it." The farmer scratches his beard, thinking. A mainstream fact floats through your mind. Barn lofts were common shelters for poor wanderers, and farmers often traded lodging for simple chores like hauling water, repairing fences, or gathering eggs under the terrifying supervision of chickens. Historians still argue whether farmers extended such hospitality out of kindness, community norms, or the practical desire for free labour. The farmer grunts. "I could use help mucking the stalls." He gestures behind him toward a barn door slightly ajar. The smell wafting from it answers the question of whether this task will be glamorous. Spoiler, it will not. You agree, because warmth is warmth, and straw is straw, and your standards stopped being high at around mile 3 of yesterday's walk. Inside the barn, the light filters through cracks in the timber walls, turning the dust motes into tiny floating stars. Cows shift lazily in their stalls, snorting whenever one of them feels like being dramatic. A goat stares at you with intense suspicion, as goats do. There's a ladder leading up to the loft, where you see thick heaps of hay, a potential bed, assuming you don't mind sleeping on what is essentially nature's version of shredded cardboard. You get to work, scraping, lifting, hauling. It's hard labour, but there's something almost soothing about it. The cow nearest you lets out a long exhale that smells like someone fermented grass in a humid cave. You accept it as part of the job. The farmer watches for a while, arms crossed, assessing whether you're the kind of traveller who works or the kind who naps upright. After a moment, he gives a small approving nod. "Loft's yours for the day," he says. "Tonight too, if you need it." You climb the ladder, stepping carefully so you don't fall through a loose rung and make an unscheduled appearance in the goat pen below. The loft greets you with a soft, dusty smell, hay mixed with the faint sweetness of stored grain. You spread out a patch of cleanish straw and sit, feeling the tension slowly melt from your legs. From here, you can see through a wide gap in the boards. The farmland stretches out in long, neatish rows, and the hamlet sits quietly in the distance. You hear the rhythmic thump of the farmer chopping wood outside, steady, dependable, almost like a lullaby if you're really tired, which you absolutely are. You lie back, hands behind your head, testing the loft's comfort level. It's decent. A little pokey, a little dusty, but compared to last night's crate, this is practically 5-star living. a quirky tidbit bubbles up from your memory. Some medieval travellers believed sleeping in hay improved dreams because hay was considered sun-touched. Others believed hay attracted mice, who might nibble on your belongings or your toes, depending on rodent mood. You glance around to make sure no tiny eyes are watching. You drift in and out of a light doze, the kind where you hear everything but can't bring yourself to react. A horse stomps below. A sparrow flutters into the rafters. Somewhere outside, a dog barks because a leaf dared to move without permission. The loft creaks rhythmically as the wind nudges the barn walls, creating a soft, familiar sway. Then you hear the farmer calling, "Traveller, you hungry?" You blink awake. Yes. Always. Yes. You climb down from the loft, carefully because gravity has opinions about ladders, and follow him to the farmhouse. He offers you a bowl of pottage, thick, steaming, and tasting like peas, herbs, and the optimism that dinner might involve meat. You eat, gratefully warming from the inside out. Most travellers take the loft this time of year, the farmer tells you between sips of small beer. Better than the road, better than the woods, though some swear the mill down the way has ghosts. You smile into your bowl. Ghost rumours are the medieval equivalent of public Wi-Fi, available everywhere whether you want them or not. When you're finished, you thank him and return to the loft. The sun is already tilting downward, casting long shadows across the barn. You settle back into your nest of hay, pulling your wool scrap around your shoulders. The world outside quiets slowly. Chickens roost. The farmer puts away his tools. A cow shifts in its sleep, mumbling in cow language. And you, exhausted from chores and travel, sink deeper into the straw, letting warmth and the soft rustling around you lull your thoughts toward haziness. Tonight, this loft is home, not perfect, not fancy, but safe, warm, and earned. You wake in the loft to the sound of a chicken announcing its opinion about sunrise with unnecessary enthusiasm. Sunlight blades through the slats above you, catching bits of hay in a soft golden shimmer. You stretch, feeling only mildly stabbed by the straw, progress. The barn below murmurs with sleepy animal sounds, a cow sighing as though it's already tired of the day, the goat shifting with the stealth of a creature plotting something, the rustle of mice that you politely pretend not to hear. You climb down the ladder slowly, legs stiff but not ungrateful. The farmer doesn't seem to be around, but fresh footprints in the dirt suggest he's already in the fields. You gather your things, thank the barn in your head. Yes, you've reached the part of travel exhaustion where you thank inanimate structures, and step into the bright morning. The air smells of dew, soil, and distant baking bread. For about 3 seconds you think maybe, just maybe, today will be smooth. And then your stomach growls so loudly the chickens look offended. Time to move on. You leave the farm behind and follow a narrow track that winds between hedges toward the village proper. You'd like to stay longer, but travellers can only linger so long before becoming unpaid farm decorations. Besides, the day's miles won't walk themselves. You pass the hamlet's few cottages, nodding to a woman drawing water from a well. She eyes your bag with curiosity before giving a polite wave. Hospitality varies from place to place, but small gestures like that are quiet reminders that not everyone assumes travellers are one loose chicken feather away from causing trouble. The village church sits at the far end of the lane, squat and stone-built, its porch wide and arched. And just like that, your next sleeping prospect appears before you, the medieval church porch. A surprising number of poor wanderers used them, not officially, but by long-standing tradition. Church porches were often considered neutral ground, as these sanctuary-adjacent compromise between you can't sleep inside the church and I guess the porch is technically public. A mainstream fact: many churches deliberately left porches open overnight because villagers used them as meeting spaces, market spots, or makeshift shelters during storms. Historians still argue whether clergy tolerated travellers there out of spiritual duty, or because kicking them out created more noise than leaving them alone. As you approach, the cool shade of the porch beckons like an old friend waving you over. The stone floor inside is worn smooth by centuries of feet. Pilgrims, villagers, brides, grooms, and probably a few chickens because chickens go everywhere. You step under the archway and exhale. It's peaceful here, cool, quiet. A welcome contrast to the sun already warming the fields. A wooden bench lines one side of the porch. Not exactly plush, but definitely better than ground-level dirt. You lower yourself onto it. letting the stone's coolness seep into your back. For a moment, you close your eyes, just a moment, listening to the soft rustle of leaves outside and the distant hum of the village beginning its day. You're almost asleep when footsteps scrape across the stones. You jerk upright. A man in a brown robe stands in the doorway holding a broom. He blinks at you slowly, in that tired cleric way that says he has already prayed for patience once today and may need to do so again. "Resting, are you?" he says, voice mild but edged with, "I sweep this porch every morning and your face is currently in my way." You stand politely. "Just stopping for a bit. Didn't mean to intrude." He studies you for a long moment, then sighs. "Travellers often do. Just don't block the entrance and don't feed the church cat. He bites the choir boys when spoiled." He gestures vaguely toward a shadowed corner. You look, but see nothing. A quirky tidbit comes to mind. Some medieval churches kept cats to protect manuscripts and buildings from mice, though those cats quickly developed reputations as tiny, furry tyrants. "Thank you," you say. He nods once, returns to sweeping, and allows you to reclaim the bench, as long as you angle yourself away from the doorway. You stretch your legs out again, settling into a more modest nap posture. The morning breeze drifts through the archway, cool and clean. A swallow flits overhead, scolding you for existing near its nesting beam. For a while, you drift somewhere between rest and wakefulness. You listen to the cleric's slow, rhythmic sweeping, to the occasional villagers passing, their footsteps echoing across the stones, to the soft clink of a metal bell inside as the church door sways gently. But sleep here is never deep, not on a church porch. You're aware of every sound, every shifting shadow, and when the cleric pauses his sweeping to say, "You'll want to move on before evening," you open your eyes, knowing he's right. Church. Porches were tolerated as midday shelters, but not always welcomed as overnight accommodations. Travellers often slipped away before dark to avoid being shooed off or caught in awkward conversations about appropriate use of sacred architecture. You sit up fully. "Is it forbidden?" you ask. "Not forbidden," he says. "Just discouraged." He leans on his broom, thoughtful. Some say spirits wander near the churchyard at night. Others say thieves hide under the porch eaves. Historians still argue whether such tales kept people safe or kept the clergy from dealing with surprise overnight guests. His eyes twinkle just slightly, as if he enjoys not clarifying. "I'll move on soon," you assure him. He nods and continues sweeping, occasionally muttering about leaves that refuse to stay where God intended. Before leaving, you take a slow breath, appreciating the scent of stone warmed by sunlight, the gentle echo of footsteps, the sense of pause the porch provides. It's not a place to sleep long, but it is a place to rest, to count your blessings. You have at least 3, your boots, your breadcrumbs, and not having been stepped on by a cow this morning. You shoulder your bag, step back into the sunlight, and glance once more at the shady archway. Another temporary shelter, another reminder that medieval travel is a patchwork of borrowed corners and tolerated spaces. You head down the lane again, knowing the road will lead you somewhere new before nightfall, and that your next resting place will probably involve less stone and more improvisation. The church bell rings behind you, as though gently nudging you onward. You leave the church behind, stepping back onto the narrow village lane as the morning sun climbs higher. The air warms just enough to lift your spirits, but not enough to stop your stomach from reminding you that you've eaten nothing since the farmer's pottage. You fish a crumb from your bag, a single, heroic crumb, and decide to save it in case you need emotional support later. Villagers begin their daily routines. A pair of women shake out blankets. A child chases a goose with the confidence of someone who has never actually been bitten by a goose. A man pounds a wooden mallet against a cartwheel, each thump ringing out like he's trying to communicate with mountain gods. And in the heart of the village, the market stalls stand empty but expectant, like they're waiting for the day's drama to begin. Somewhere around noon, judging by the sun, and the universal medieval signal of someone yelling, "Is that all the fish you've got?" the little market square comes alive. Merchants arrive with crates and baskets, spreading bolts of rough cloth, bundles of herbs, and wheels of cheese suspiciously shaped like weaponry. You weave through the crowd, your senses soaking in the swirl of smells, fresh vegetables, tanned leather, human sweat, and the delightful hint of honey cakes you absolutely can't afford. You pause beneath the shade of one of the wooden stalls. The timber beams are sturdy, carved with marks from years of weather, and based on some knife scratches, boredom. A mainstream historical fact surfaces. Medieval markets often had permanent stall frames that stood empty overnight, becoming de facto shelters for poor travellers who needed somewhere, anywhere, to sleep. Historians still argue whether villagers ignored this practice out of compassion, or because they genuinely didn't notice unconscious peasants tucked between barrels at dawn. You rest a moment, letting the bustle wash over you. A merchant is loudly haggling with a customer over a bolt of rough linen. "It's good quality," the merchant insists. "It's transparent," the customer fires back. "A breeze adds charm." "And hypothermia?" You smile despite yourself. The medieval marketplace is chaotic, but it's also comforting, full of noise and life, and far less judgmental than barn goats or church cats. As you lean against the stall frame, a baker passes carrying a tray of steaming rolls. The smell hits you like a warm hug from a friendly grandmother who wants you to eat more. You make the mistake of inhaling deeply, and your stomach responds with a growl so dramatic you half expect applause. The baker glances your way, amused, and tosses you a small misshapen roll, the kind that didn't pass inspection but still tastes like heaven. "Eat," she says simply. "Thank you," you reply, trying not to inhale the roll in a single bite. You wander as you eat, exploring the edges of the market. Behind some stalls are wooden counters propped on crates, and beneath those crates are shadows, shaded sanctuaries where your tired body immediately begins imagining sleep. But it's too early. Vendors stand everywhere, reorganizing, shouting prices, gossiping about the Reeves' new boots, and complaining about how last year's harvest smelled wrong. Medieval villagers were champion-level complainers. It was practically a sport. You step aside to watch two children stacking apples into a pyramid. One pokes the pyramid, sending the apples rolling, and both laugh as though they've committed the world's funniest crime. A few stalls down, a man sharpens knives on a spinning stone. The rasping rhythm is oddly soothing, almost hypnotic. You feel your eyelids droop, not to sleep, just to appreciate the sound. But as afternoon surrenders to evening, the market begins its slow exhale. Merchants pack away their goods. The shouting fades into murmurs. One stall collapses with a clatter as its owner folds the wooden legs. Another merchant ties canvas sheets over his table to protect it from dew. And gradually, the square empties until only a few stragglers remain. You sit on the edge of an unused stall platform as dusk settles. The timbers beneath you are still warm from the sun, but as the shadow stretches across the square, the temperature drops, with surprising speed. A quirky fact floats up. Some medieval stalls were built so sturdily that they doubled as official sleeping spots for travelling artisans, who curled beneath them to avoid rain. Others were so rickety that even mice filed complaints. This one feels somewhere in between. You test the space beneath the counter. Dry enough, large enough. Smells mostly like onions and old wood, which is practically luxurious in your world. You slide beneath it, arranging your wool scrap under your head. The wooden beams above you creak gently as they cool in the night air. You settle in, listening as the village quiets. Someone coughs in a nearby cottage. A dog pads across the square, sniffing your stall briefly before deciding you're uninteresting. Crickets strike up their nighttime concert. The faint smell of lingering bread and herbs drifts in the air. Your body relaxes. Then, clack, clack, clack. Footsteps. Sharp, hurried footsteps. You stiffen, holding your breath. A pair of legs stop directly in front of the stall. You hear hushed voices. "Here," a man whispers. "No, further up, near the miller's stall." A second voice answers, sounding annoyed. They move on. You exhale quietly, probably just villagers searching for something they lost, or trying to sneak a chicken home that doesn't belong to them. A perfectly normal medieval pastime. You let your body soften again, tension melting into the wooden floor. Your makeshift shelter isn't perfect, but it is yours for the evening. Something about the tight, low space feels safe, like the world is pressing a gentle hand against your back saying, "Rest, just a little." You close your eyes, one long breath, then another, and slowly, beneath the beams of a humble market stall, you drift into a shallow but peaceful sleep. You wake to the unmistakable sound of something creaking, long, slow, and very intentional, like old wood deciding whether it's in the mood to collapse. For one confusing second, you think you're still under the market stall. Then you realize you're hearing running water too, and wind, and a faint rhythmic thump that might be the world's unhappiest pigeon. You blink awake and remember. You left the market square at dawn, stomach full of that blessed lumpy roll, and followed the road out of the village. The path wound alongside a thin stream, then dipped toward a cluster of old buildings half swallowed by tall grass. And here you are now, standing at the edge of something that looks like a half-forgotten relic from a time when everything was louder, heavier, and powered by water instead of willpower. An abandoned mill. Well, abandoned-ish, because the wheel is moving. Not fast, not smooth, but moving. Each turn groans through the wooden beams like the mill is complaining about being woken from a century-long nap. And that thump? A loose board banging every time the wheel dips. You pause, sizing up the building. The roof isn't fully intact, but it's not fully missing either, which in your world qualifies as potential housing. Mills often stood outside villages and sometimes fell into disuse when the stream rerouted, or the miller retired, or someone told a suspiciously dramatic ghost story that convinced everyone to grind grain somewhere else. A mainstream fact pops into your tired brain. Many medieval mills were incredibly valuable. They were economic hubs, heavily regulated and crucial for grinding grain into bread. Historians still argue whether abandoned mills were left empty because of structural decay, or because villagers had superstitions that made them avoid the ruins after dusk. You step closer. The grass whispers against your ankles. A dragonfly zips past your ear like a tiny warning. The wooden door hangs half open, swaying slightly in the breeze. Inside, everything smells of moss, damp wood, and dust that hasn't been disturbed in far too long. Perfect. You slip inside, ducking under a sagging lintel beam. Soft, diffused light filters through gaps in the walls, painting everything in stripes of gold and shadow. The interior is a maze of beams, abandoned sacks, decaying work tables, and tools so rusted they look like they'd crumble if you whispered near them. Up above, the gears of the mill still shift with each turn of the wheel, grinding their ancient creaky song. Something scurries across the rafters. Probably a mouse, hopefully a mouse. Definitely a mouse. Unless the rafters are haunted by mice with human aspirations. You pick your way through the debris, testing spots on the floor with your boot before committing your full weight. Some boards flex like they're reconsidering their life choices. Others feel sturdy enough. Near the back wall, you find a corner where the floor seems reasonably trustworthy, and a pile of what used to be burlap sacks lies in a heap. They're dusty, but you've slept on worse. Remember the crate. Remember the hay that stabbed you repeatedly out of spite. This is practically a feather mattress. You settle your bag down and sit, letting your spine lean against the cool stone wall. The mill creaks again, deeper this time. A long, hollow moan that sounds like a bored ghost trying to get your attention. You smirk to yourself. "If you want rent," you whisper, "get in line behind the farmer." Outside, the stream flows steadily, a gentle shush-shush that rocks your thoughts into a soft rhythm. Despite the eerie ambience, you feel oddly safe. Mills were sturdy structures, built to withstand water, weather, and the occasional disappointed customer demanding finer flour. Even abandoned, they hold their shape, mostly. You close your eyes for a moment, listening. Crack, creak, shush, tap, tap. Your eyes snap open. A small pebble rolls across the floor in front of you. You stiffen, scanning the shadows. Did something knock it loose? A rat? A bird? A mischievous spirit from the local rumour mill? Pun absolutely intended. You wait. Nothing moves. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your memory. Many travellers claimed mills were haunted simply because the mechanical noises never stopped, even when no one was operating them. The rhythmic creaks and shifting gears made the buildings feel alive. Some people swore they saw shadows move on their own. Others insisted they heard whispering through the old machinery. You don't hear whispers now, just the occasional plunk of water hitting wood. But you can understand why the stories exist. You lie back on the burlap sacks, folding your hands over your stomach. You stare up at the rafters as the last light of day filters through the gaps. Tiny dust particles swirl in the golden glow, drifting like slow-motion fireflies. Your eyelids grow heavy. The mill wheel thumps steadily, The gears groan. Your body relaxes, sinking deeper into the dusty bedding. You're almost asleep when, thunk, something heavy lands on the roof. You jolt upright, heart sprinting a marathon. You hold your breath, waiting. Another soft scuffle follows, then nothing. Bird? Cat? Demon rooster? You exhale slowly, shaking your head. Probably just a roosting owl. Owls love abandoned buildings. They're nature's night shift supervisors. You lie back down, tension easing, and chuckle under your breath. If you drop a mouse on me as tribute, you mutter, I will scream. You shift on the sacks, adjusting your blanket scrap around your shoulders. The mill's cool air hugs your skin, but the sacks insulate just enough to keep you from shivering. Your body sinks deeper into restfulness. You think back on where you've slept so far. Crates, alehouse floors, barn lofts, church porches, market stalls. This mill, with its strange noises and half-broken beauty, fits right in. Medieval peasants didn't get to choose their comfort. They chose whatever wouldn't collapse on them immediately. If a structure was dry, mostly intact, and only moderately haunted, that counted as prime real estate. The creaking shifts once more, a long groan that sounds almost like a sigh settling into the night. You close your eyes again, letting the rhythm pull you towards sleep. The mill's sounds wrap around you like an odd lullaby, uneven, eerie, but steady, familiar in a strange way, like the road itself is holding you. Shush, shush, creak, creak, tap, tap, silence. Your breathing slows, your muscles soften, and beneath the wheels slow turning, in a long-abandoned mill that welcomes you with its groans and shadows, you drift into a deep, well-earned sleep. You leave the mill at first light, stepping into the cool morning as mist clings to the grass like it doesn't want to let go. Your back pops in 3 different places, one of which you're pretty sure didn't exist yesterday. Sleeping on sacks will do that. Still, you're rested enough to face the road again, and the stream beside you hums a gentle farewell as you follow the wagon-rutted path away from the abandoned timbers and their echoing creaks. The world is quiet in this hour. A thin layer of dew blankets everything, turning spiderwebs into tiny jeweled nets. Birds chirp with suspicious enthusiasm, as if they know something you don't. A soft breeze carries the faint smell of rye fields warming under the new sun. It's the perfect time to walk, calm, empty, and just cold enough to keep you moving. But hours pass, and the sun climbs high. The stillness breaks, the warmth thickens, and the path grows long. You sip from a water skin you refilled at the stream, but your legs begin to ache in that weary traveller way that says, I will stop moving soon, whether you want me to or not. So you scan the roadside for any place to rest, and then you see it. A tiny roadside shrine stands just ahead, half hidden under an old oak whose branches droop like they're protecting it. The shrine itself is simple. A stone niche with a carved figure inside, worn smooth by centuries of sun, wind, and the occasional overly affectionate cow. Its little roof of stacked planks tilts at a charmingly precarious angle, and a handful of fresh wildflowers lay at the statue's feet. You slow your steps, drawn to it in that way travellers often are. A shrine means safety, or at least the idea of it. A mainstream fact drifts into your mind. Roadside shrines were incredibly common across medieval Europe, offering spiritual comfort to passers-by, marking pilgrim routes, or standing as memorials to forgotten events. Historians still argue whether travellers treated these shrines as sacred spaces or as extremely convenient excuses to stop and rest without judgment. For your part, you will absolutely be using this shrine as a resting stop, sacred or not. You ease yourself down onto the grass beside it, leaning your back against the oak trunk. The bark is rough but solid, warm from the sun. You sigh with relief, the deep kind that sounds like someone let the air out of a tired donkey. You stretch your legs out, wiggling your toes inside your 2 worn boots. The shrine's carved figure watches over you with an expression that could be serene or mildly disapproving. Hard to tell with weather-smoothed faces. You give the statue a small nod anyway, just in case showing respect lessens the odds of bad luck today. The shade feels heavenly. You close your eyes. Just a quick rest, you tell yourself. Not sleeping. Definitely not sleeping. Naturally, you begin drifting towards sleep almost instantly. A gentle rustling nearby pulls you halfway back to alertness. You crack one eye open. A squirrel stares at you from the grass, tiny paws gripping an acorn like it plans to fight you for it. You raise a hand in peace. The squirrel flicks its tail dramatically. Squirrels are always dramatic, and disappears up the oak. You smile at the absurdity of it. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your brain. In some regions, travellers left little offerings at shrines, coins, flowers, bits of bread, in exchange for good luck. Some even believed forest creatures acted as messengers or guardians of these sacred spots. You glance up toward the squirrel's branch. "I'm not asking you for spiritual guidance," you murmur. "Just don't drop anything on me." The shrine's stillness wraps around you again, and for a moment you let your thoughts drift with the breeze. The road feels distant here, the world smaller. Kindness seems possible. Sleep also seems possible. But before you sink too deep, footsteps crunch in the grass nearby. Your eyes snap open. A woman approaches carrying a woven basket filled with herbs. She has the steady, brisk walk of someone who's already done 3 hours of work before breakfast. She spots you immediately, you're not exactly hidden, and her expression flickers between caution and curiosity. "Resting?" she asks, adjusting the basket against her hip. "Yes," you answer, sitting up a little straighter. "Just passing through." She nods slowly, then kneels to place a sprig of rosemary at the shrine. "Good day for travelling," she says, "but the road's long ahead. Shrine's a good place to stop." There's no accusation in her tone, just an observation, mild and practical. You hesitate, then ask, "Is it all right that I'm here?" "Of course," she replies. "Shrines are for everyone. Better you rest here than fall asleep in the ditch," she pauses. "Ditches are popular with snakes." You shudder. "Great. Another thing to avoid." She stands and prepares to continue on. Before she leaves, she looks back. "If you're heading toward the bridge, be careful. The boards are loose this season." Then, with a wave, she disappears down the path. You file that warning away. Loose bridge boards are as medieval as stale bread, but forewarned is forearmed, or foreankled. The shade deepens as a cloud drifts overhead. You take one more long, grateful breath and pull yourself to your feet. Time to keep moving. You give the shrine a small nod of thanks, not because you're superstitious, but because gratitude feels right in this moment. You sling your bag over your shoulder and step back onto the road. Before you fully leave, you glance once more at the shrine. It stands quietly, a patient little guardian at the edge of the world. You touch the carved stone lightly. "For luck," you murmur. Then you walk on. The road ahead bends gently toward the forest, and somewhere beyond that, the loose-planked bridge waits. But for now, the shrine's calm energy lingers with you, a soft glow in your tired chest. And as your boots tap the dirt path in a steady rhythm, you can't help but think, if every shelter on your journey were as peaceful as that little sacred nook, travel would be a lot less harrowing. But then again, where's the adventure in that? The warning about the loose bridge board stays with you as the path gently curves away from the shrine and toward a wider, flatter stretch of road. Midday sun warms your shoulders, but not enough to lull you into the dangerous comfort of daydreaming. The forest edge looms ahead, dark, cool, and very good at whispering things like, "Are you sure you want to enter?" You brace yourself and keep walking. Hours pass. The road narrows, then widens again, and your legs begin sending official complaints to your brain. Your boots crunch over gravel as you descend a small hill, and at the bottom you hear it. The clatter of wheels, the creak of timbers, and the rhythmic grunt of a very tired draft horse. A wagon appears around the bend, its canvas cover fluttering like a lazy flag. The horse plods forward with the resigned expression of an animal who did not ask for this job, but has decided to be dignified about it anyway. The wagoner sits on the bench seat at the front, a long coat thrown over his shoulders, a floppy hat shielding his eyes from the sun. His beard is thick and silvered, and his posture says he's slept in stranger places than you ever will. As you approach, he pulls the reins slightly, slowing the horse to a friendly crawl. "Traveller?" he calls out. "Need a lift?" His voice is warm, like someone who's shared many fire pits and heard many stories. Wagons in the medieval world were sometimes hostile to hitchhikers, sometimes welcoming depending on the driver, the weather, and whether the wagon was already full of cabbages. Luckily, this wagon seems cabbage-free. You hesitate a moment. Hitching a ride is wonderful, except when wagoners expect payment you don't have. But the man doesn't look greedy, just tired. If it's not a bother, you say. Bother? He laughs, patting the space behind him. Company's worth more than coin on a long road. Climb in. You hop onto the wagon, settling onto a pile of folded canvas. The boards beneath you creak in a familiar, comforting way. The wagon smells of rope, old wood, and something vaguely sweet. Maybe dried apples, maybe the residue of a past cargo. The horse snorts as if to say, "Welcome aboard, do not talk to me." The wagoner clicks his tongue, and the wheels begin turning again. "Name's Oswin," he says. "Been hauling goods between towns for 30 years. You introduce yourself, and he nods thoughtfully. "You've got the look of someone who's slept everywhere but a proper bed." You chuckle. "That's about right." Oswin adjusts his hat. "Well, you're welcome to rest in the back. Don't worry about bandits. They're afraid of my singing." You raise an eyebrow. "You're singing?" "Oh yes," he says solemnly. "Truly terrible. I once made a goose cry." You laugh. A real one. The kind that releases tension from your shoulders. Inside the wagon, you stretch out across the canvas bundles. It's surprisingly comfortable. The sway of the wagon rocks your body in a rhythm far gentler than last night's mill wheel. For a while, silence stretches between you and Oswin, broken only by the clop of hooves and the low rattle of wheels. A mainstream historical fact floats into your mind. Travelling wagoners were often key sources of news between villages, carrying stories, warnings, and gossip across long routes. Historians still argue whether these men exaggerated for entertainment or if they simply witnessed more than the average villager. "Where you headed?" Oswin asks without looking back. "Anywhere with food and a place to sleep," you say honestly. "A fine goal. I once travelled with a man whose goal was to find the world's largest turnip. Didn't make it past the next village." You smile, letting your eyes half close. The breeze slips through the wagon's open back, cool but gentle, carrying the scent of pine from the approaching woods. Oswin hums a tuneless melody, fortunately quiet enough not to make geese cry, and you can feel yourself growing drowsy. You never planned to nap in a moving wagon, but your body disagrees with your modest ambitions. You shift, curling into the canvas. The boards vibrate softly beneath you. The rhythm is hypnotic. Bump, sway. Bump, sway. The horse snorts occasionally, punctuating the road's lullaby. Just before sleep claims you, Oswin calls back. "If rain comes, tuck under the tarp. Had one traveller who didn't listen. Woke up wetter than a fish." You mumble something appreciative, already drifting. But sleep in a wagon is never uninterrupted. A sudden jolt wakes you, followed by the wagon slowing to a near stop. You sit up, blinking. Ahead is the bridge the herb-gathering woman warned you about, a wooden span stretching over a narrow ravine. The boards look questionable. Some are bowed. Others are missing entirely. The railing leans like it's drunk. Oswin grimaces. "Ha! She's gotten worse." He climbs down, reins in hand, inspecting the planks. "Don't worry," he says. "Wagon's light today. We've crossed worse." You climb down too, just in case you need to leap to safety or run very fast. The horse paws the ground, unimpressed. Oswin guides the wagon onto the bridge slowly. The boards creak, then groan, then shriek in the universal language of wood that does not want to hold this much weight. You wince. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some medieval bridges were repaired only when catastrophe struck, meaning travellers spent years crossing versions of temporary fixes, involving logs, mud, and pure optimism. "Go on then," Oswin murmurs to the horse, patting its neck. "One step at a time." The wagon rolls forward. Creak, creak, snap. No, just a loud crack, but the plank holds. You release a breath you didn't know you were holding. Finally, the wheels touch solid ground again. Oswin beams proudly. "See? The trick is to be heavier than the bridge expects, but not heavier than it can handle." That sounds contradictory. Oh, it is. Deeply. He climbs back onto the seat. "Well then, hop in. You look like you could do with more rest." And with that, you continue your rolling journey. You curl back under the canvas, the tension dissolving from your body. Oswin begins humming again, mercifully still on the gentle side, and the forest opens ahead in dappled light. The wagon rocks you back into that warm, drifting state, somewhere between dreaming and waking. Tonight, you think, maybe you'll find shelter on your own. But for now, you'll let the wheels do the walking. And as sleep tugs at you again, the road whispers beneath the wagon, gently carrying you toward whatever awaits. You must drift deeper asleep than you realize, because when the wagon finally slows, it's the sudden lack of movement that wakes you. Your eyes blink open to the sight of late afternoon sunlight spilling across the canvas overhead, warm and golden like someone politely tapping your shoulder and saying, "Hey traveller, the day is ending whether you're ready or not." Oswin's voice drifts from the front of the wagon. "End of the line for me," he calls. "Goods to deliver, but there's a village a little farther on. Should reach it before dark if your legs cooperate." You sit up, stretching the stiffness from your back. "Thank you," you say genuinely, because a ride, even half a day's worth, is a gift in your world. He tips his floppy hat. "Safe roads to you, and if you ever hear someone singing badly enough to scare wolves, that'll be me." You hop down and wave as he guides his wagon off the path and toward a cluster of distant cottages. The horse flicks its tail in farewell, unclear if it's friendly or dismissive, but you'll take it. The sun slips lower as you walk, painting the world in warm oranges and long shadows. The road bends gently until finally you reach a wide, grassy space just outside the next village, a commons area. The ground is flat, dotted with a few fire pits ringed by stones. Some are old, filled with ash. Others look freshly used, faint wisps of smoke rising like ghosts that don't feel the need to be subtle. You inhale the air, wood smoke, grass, and that familiar, not unpleasant scent of people who've worked all day and aren't pretending otherwise. A small group of travellers is already gathered around one of the fire pits. A pot hangs over the flames, steaming gently. The group glances up as you approach, a mix of curiosity and tired camaraderie. Travellers on the commons rarely expect trouble. Most are too exhausted to cause any. One woman waves you over. "Plenty of space by the fire," she says. Her cloak is patched in a dozen places, each a different colour, like she's wearing the world's friendliest quilt. You settle onto a smooth patch of grass near the fire, warmth soaking instantly into your bones. The flames crack gently, throwing light on the faces around you, faces lined by sun, wind, and the endless miles of travel. A mainstream historical fact comes to mind. Village commons were designated public lands used for grazing animals, seasonal fairs, and, unofficially, for poor wanderers who needed a place to sleep under the open sky. Historians still argue whether villages tolerated night sleepers here out of necessity, hospitality, or simply because it was too much effort to chase them off every single evening. A man with a thick beard stirs the pot with a stick that has clearly doubled as both a spoon and a tool for poking uncooperative goats. "Pottage," he says simply, offering you a bowl-like scoop of wooden bark carved into a cup shape. Nothing fancy, but it's warm. You accept gratefully. The pottage is thick and slightly lumpy, but somehow perfect. Hunger does miracles for seasoning. As you eat, the group slips into the easy rhythm of travellers sharing a fire, light jokes, weary sighs, and that unspoken agreement that nobody will ask too many personal questions. A lanky youth across the circle pulls out a small flute and plays a soft tune. It's simple, but soothing. You let your head tilt back, watching sparks rise into the dusky sky. Stars creep in, faint but growing brighter. A woman beside you nods toward the horizon. "Storm coming tomorrow," she says. "Better travel early if you want to avoid it." You nod, though tomorrow feels like another universe. Tonight is what matters. One man leans forward, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Anyone else hear about the lights by the old watchtower?" He glances around. They say someone, or something, lives there still. You nearly laugh. The rumour is following you like an over-enthusiastic puppy. The quilt cloak woman snorts. Lights? Could be smugglers. Could be farmers having secret meetings. Could be a bored shepherd with a lantern and too much imagination. Historians still argue whether half these stories start because people want excitement or because goats aren't dramatic enough company. The group chuckles. You do too. The fire crackles deeper into orange-red embers. Someone adds a log, and sparks leap upward. The air is cooling fast now, night settling in layers across the commons like a giant comfortable blanket. You lie back on the grass, folding your arms behind your head. The earth feels surprisingly soft beneath you. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some medieval travellers preferred sleeping outdoors even when given indoor space, because the fresh air reduced fleas. You look down at your clothes and think, yes, that checks out. Around you, conversations soften. The flute player switches to a slower, dreamier melody before setting the instrument aside. Someone yawns loudly enough that half the group joins in by reflex. A dog, whose arrival went completely unnoticed, pads over and circles twice before settling at someone's feet. It huffs softly, the universal dog sound for, I guess this will do. The fire dims slightly. Shadows stretch long across the grass, shifting with the flicker of the flames. The stars sharpen overhead, countless, cold, bright. You watch as constellations emerge one by one until the sky feels like a perfectly stitched tapestry. Your eyes grow heavy. You pull your wool scrap over yourself like a small, stubborn blanket. A woman murmurs, half asleep, "Safe dreams, traveller." You smile. And you. Slowly, the warmth of the fire, the gentle breath of the night wind, and the murmur of the last whispers around the commons weave together into a soft cradle of sound. The grass cushioned beneath you feels like a gift. You've slept on far worse, and your weary body welcomes the chance to sink into something that doesn't creak, shake, or poke you. Your breathing slows, your limbs loosen, and under the open sky, surrounded by strangers who feel almost like old friends, you drift peacefully into sleep. One more night on the endless road, held by the humble glow of a shared fire. You wake just before dawn, not because you're well rested, but because the dog that joined the group last night has decided your foot is the perfect pillow and shifts its weight like it's kneading dough. The fire has burned down to faint crimson embers, glowing in the dim blue-grey light of early morning. Around you, the other travellers are curled in various positions of questionable orthopedic wisdom. One with an arm over his face, another sprawled like he lost a dramatic duel with his own blanket. You sit up slowly, brushing dew from your sleeves. The grass is damp, cool against your palms. A faint mist hovers over the commons, giving everything a dreamlike sheen, as if the world itself hasn't quite decided to wake up yet. Birds begin their first uncertain chirps, sounding more like sleepy mumbles than songs. Your stomach grumbles in the quiet. Loudly. You whisper to it, "I know," as if that will help. It doesn't. You stand, stretch, gather your things, and start walking before anyone else stirs. There's something peaceful about being the first one back on the road. It feels like slipping out of a warm room into crisp morning air, full of possibility, or at least fewer people who might judge your bedhead. The path winds between fields still hidden by mist, then gradually slopes toward a tree line. As the woods draw closer, you take a deep breath. The forest edge is always a gamble. On one hand, it offers shade, berries, and the occasional quietly judgmental squirrel. On the other hand, forests also hold wolves, thieves, and that one incredibly aggressive goose you once met far from any human settlement, which still feels suspicious. The sun climbs slowly, casting long shadows from the trees. You step beneath the first branches, and the world shifts. The air cools instantly. The scent of earth and leaves surrounds you, rich and heavy, like the forest is exhaling around you. Sunlight filters through the canopy in thin gold ribbons, giving the ground a patchwork glow. You walk deeper in, boots crunching on last year's leaves. Birds speak in bursts. A small animal darts across your path, probably a rabbit, unless it was a very confident rat. You try not to think too hard about it. Hours pass. The path narrows, curls, widens again. The forest seems endless. By midday, you feel yourself flagging. The excitement of the morning has washed away, leaving a tired ache in your muscles. You consider stopping, but the underbrush looks damp and uninviting. You press on, hoping for a clearing, a fallen log, anything that looks remotely nap-compatible. Instead, you find a clearing with the remains of an old fire pit, stones arranged in a circle, blackened from past flames. This should bring comfort, but something about the clearing feels watched. Not in a supernatural way, just in the way forests always seem to notice you more than you notice them. A mainstream fact flits through your mind. Medieval forests weren't pristine wilderness. They were often used for foraging, charcoal burning, even hunting by nobles. Historians still argue whether common travellers respected the woods as sacred spaces or merely feared what might lurk within them. You step into the clearing, scanning for any sign of recent use. The ashes are cold, scattered by wind or animals. A fallen log lies on one side, moss climbing its length like a heavy green blanket. It looks dry enough to sit on. So you do, cautiously, in case the moss is secretly slippery and plotting your downfall. As you eat the last crumb of your bread, your mind drifts. If you had more food, you'd linger longer. But dusk isn't far off, and sleeping in the woods at night is a different experience altogether. Still, you're exhausted. Just sitting makes your eyelids sag. But no, not here, not yet. You push yourself up, legs wobbling slightly, and keep moving. The path grows dimmer as the canopy thickens overhead. Sunlight becomes scattered flecks. The rustling grows louder. Birds, wind, leaves brushing one another like old friends sharing quiet gossip. A squirrel chitters angrily at you from a high branch, probably for daring to exist within its jurisdiction. Afternoon fades, and when your exhaustion returns with vengeance, you finally admit it. You won't make it out of the woods before nightfall, so you begin to scan, really scan, for somewhere, anywhere safe enough to sleep. Woods have their own rules about nighttime. Don't sleep on game trails. You don't want to be trampled by deer with commitment issues. Avoid hollow logs occupied by creatures who do not appreciate surprise tenants. And if possible, find a spot close enough to see the path but far enough that thieves won't immediately trip over you. A small clearing appears to your right. Gentle ground, fewer roots, a fallen branch shaped like a crooked bench. You step toward it, assessing. It'll do. You gather dry leaves to make a cushioned spot, layering them like nature's slightly crunchy mattress. You place your wool scrap over top and sit, leaning your back against the slanted trunk of a birch tree. Night creeps in slowly. The forest transitions from day noises to night noises. Soft clicks, distant hoots, the low hum of insects coordinating some kind of woodland rave. You take comfort in the sounds you recognize, and try to ignore the ones you don't. As darkness deepens, you light a tiny fire, just enough to keep animals away, not enough to attract unwanted human visitors. You feed it twigs until it glows weakly but steadily. Flames dance like sleepy little sprites, casting trembling shadows across the clearing. You breathe in the smoky air and lean back, letting fatigue take your limbs one by one. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some medieval travellers believed sleeping near firelight kept malevolent forest spirits away. Others insisted spirits loved hovering near fires and stole warmth from sleepers. Opinions varied wildly. Historians still argue whether these beliefs reflected real fears, or if medieval people simply couldn't resist telling spooky stories. You wrap your wool scrap around yourself and settle into your nest of leaves. The fire crackles softly, like it's trying to whisper you into comfort. Then you hear a distant howl. Your eyes fly open. It's far away, very far, but your heart doesn't understand far. It hears wolf and immediately starts beating Morse code for panic. You sit very still, listening. Silence. Then, a second howl. Closer. You swallow hard. But you remind yourself that wolves avoid fire and you're not carrying meat, or goats, or, thankfully, children. You're an unremarkable traveller lying on a very crunchy pile of leaves. You do the only thing you can. You pull your wool scrap tighter, poke the fire to brighten it, and hope whoever is howling has evening plans that don't involve you. Minutes stretch. The forest settles. The howling stops. Your heartbeat slows. Gradually your muscles loosen again, and your eyelids begin to slip. The fire dwindles to a soft glow. Crickets sing. The birch tree holds your weight like an old friend. And in the hush of the forest edge, half wild, half safe, you drift into uneasy, fragile, but desperately needed sleep. You wake to a cold nose pressing into your cheek. Not a wolf nose, thankfully, but something smaller, whiskered, and offended by your presence. You flinch back with a strangled yelp, and the creature, definitely a fox, scrambles away with a startled bark, disappearing into the underbrush. Your heart nearly leaves your body. You sit upright, clutching your wool scrap like it's a shield of legendary power. The fire is long dead, just grey ash and a few stubborn coals. The world is still dim, pre-dawn blue, quiet as a held breath. The forest around you feels softer now, less threatening, as though it regrets scaring you in the middle of the night. Or maybe that's just wishful thinking from someone who almost became a fox's breakfast buddy. You stretch slowly, every muscle protesting. Sleeping on leaves has not improved with repetition. Still, you survived the night, which is an achievement worth at least 3 imaginary gold stars. You rise unsteadily, brush the debris from your clothes, and follow the narrow path onward. Birds begin their morning chorus, loud, cheerful, completely unaware that not everyone appreciates their early enthusiasm. Sunlight filters through the branches, scattering gold across the forest floor. Eventually the trees thin, the path widens, and you step into open air once more. A stream babbles nearby, shimmering like spilled silver. You kneel long enough to splash your face with cold water, cold enough to make you gasp and instantly regret, but refreshing all the same. You follow the road a little farther until you spot something in the distance, a bridge. Not a grand stone one, but a simple wooden structure spanning a narrow, fast-moving creek. Its posts are a bit crooked and its beams weathered, but it's intact, mostly. The underside of the bridge is shaded, dark and sheltered. And suddenly, you understand why roadside sleepers use bridges so often. Protection from rain, wind, and, if you're lucky, foxes with boundary issues. A mainstream fact floats into your mind. Medieval bridges varied wildly in quality. Some were marvels of engineering, others looked like someone glued sticks together using hope and questionable carpentry. Travellers, especially the poor, often slept beneath them because the overhang offered free shelter. Historians still argue whether this practice was seen as practical resourcefulness or as a sign that society desperately needed more public inns. You approach cautiously, stepping down the slope toward the shaded alcove beneath the bridge. The earth is dry, packed from many feet, or paws, passing through over the years. You crouch down. The space is tight but manageable, tall enough for you to sit without bumping your head. The boards above you groan softly as the creek rushes below, its water carrying the scent of moss and stone. It's dim under here, almost cozy in a strange cave-like way. You settle onto a flat patch of ground and lean back against one of the support piles. The wood is cool against your spine, and the low rumble of the water becomes an instant lullaby. But before you allow yourself to fully relax, you take inventory of the local hazards. Rats? Possible. Spiders? Definitely. Strange mold that will give you plagues with names ending in pox. Let's not think about that. You take a breath. The creek rushes steadily, filling your ears with its soft, ceaseless chatter. There's an odd comfort in the consistency of running water, like nature's version of ASMR. Then the bridge makes a sound. Clunk. You tense, eyes snapping upward. Another clunk, then a creak. Someone, or something, has stepped onto the wooden planks above. You hold your breath. The footsteps continue, light but steady, crossing from one side to the other. A cartwheel squeaks faintly. A voice mutters something you can't make out. Probably a villager heading to an early market, or a shepherd, or a baker who takes mourning too seriously. The sound passes. The bridge settles back into stillness. You exhale shakily. A squirrel appears from somewhere behind you and scampers toward the water's edge, giving you a look like, oh good, another tenant. Its tail flicks disapprovingly before it scuttles off. You almost apologize to it. You pull your knees up and wrap your arms around them. Maybe you'll rest just a little. The steady rush of water is hypnotic. Your eyelids grow heavy. But no, not now. Not sleep. Not with the world so awake around you. Instead, you lean back and use this quiet moment to think. Something you rarely get the luxury to do. Your journey has already taken you through barns, alehouses, mills, shrines, and forests. You've slept on hay, wood, grass, and leaves. You've been judged by chickens, serenaded by flutes, nearly nuzzled by foxes, and warned by more random villagers than you can count. And the road keeps unfurling ahead of you, like a long ribbon you can't stop following. You reach into your bag for the last scrap of food, a tiny corner of yesterday's bread roll, and nibble thoughtfully. The taste is faintly sweet, and mostly stale, but familiar enough to ease the hunger gnawing at you. A quirky tidbit drifts into your mind. Some medieval travellers believed stopping beneath bridges brought luck for the next leg of your journey, since bridges connected places and therefore symbolised safe passage. Others, less poetically, slept under bridges because they were simply too tired to stand. You're not sure which group you belong to. Probably both. By late morning, the sunlight angles deeper under the bridge. A cool breeze skims over the creek's surface and drifts across your face. You breathe it in, letting the last of your tension ebb away. But you can't stay here forever. Eventually, the bridge will become busy, or crowded, or host to someone who doesn't appreciate uninvited sleepers. And besides, there's a shepherd's hut rumoured to be not far from here, tucked somewhere along the hillside beyond the creek. That sounds warm, rustic, slightly smelly, but warm. You push yourself to your feet, stretch until your joints stop making commentary, and climb back up to the road. The creek murmurs behind you. The bridge stands quiet again. And with your weary legs carrying you onward, you follow the path toward whatever shelter waits next, hoping this one involves fewer foxes. The path from the bridge climbs gently at first, then steeply enough that your legs begin filing official complaints again. You keep going, though, half because you have no choice, and half because the promise of a shepherd's hut ahead sounds like the sort of rustic, vaguely smelly comfort you're now trained to appreciate. The air grows warmer as the sun rises higher, and the landscape shifts from dense forest to open hillside dotted with scrubby bushes, knee-high grasses, and the occasional bored-looking sheep chewing like it's pondering the meaning of life. The sheep watch you pass with those blank, mildly judgmental eyes sheep always have. One bleats in your direction, just once, like it needs you to know it has opinions. You nod politely. No reason to offend the locals. Higher up the slope you finally spot it. A small, lopsided hut built of stacked stones and timber beams, its thatched roof pushing out at odd angles like someone slapped straw onto it and hoped for the best. Smoke curls lazily from a hole in the roof, the gentlest invitation you've seen all day. You take a deep breath. If luck is with you, whoever tends this flock might be willing to share a bit of warmth, or better yet, the floor. As you approach, you hear the unmistakable whistle of a shepherd guiding his flock. A man steps out from behind the hut, crook in hand, cloak wrapped around his shoulders. His beard is wild. His expression is unreadable. His boots look like they've walked more miles than you've thought about in your entire life. He eyes you with the same wary curiosity you've come to expect from rural folk sizing up travellers. After a moment he raises one eyebrow. Lost, are you? More like tired, you admit. Looking for somewhere to rest. He grunts, which in shepherd language could mean anything from I understand to I don't trust travellers to I wonder if this sheep is eating poison again. After a beat, he jerks his chin toward the hut. Got room on the floor. Straw's dry, but you'll help with the flock come evening. That sounds fair. Inside, the hut is dim but warm, lit by a low fire crackling in a stone pit. The air smells like wool, smoke, and the lingering aroma of porridge boiled approximately 700 times. A small pile of straw sits in one corner, clearly meant for sleeping. Tools hang from pegs on the wall. Shears, rope, a spare crook, and a battered wooden stool leans suspiciously to one side. The shepherd tosses you a water skin. Drink, then rest. Sheep don't wait for tired folk. You sit on the straw pile, which is surprisingly soft, much kinder than the barn loft's stabby hay, and infinitely preferable to sleeping under bridges with foxes investigating your face. You drink deeply, sighing as the cool water eases the dryness in your throat. Travel far? The shepherd asks, settling onto the stool with a grunt that suggests lifelong wrestling matches with stubborn livestock. Far enough. He nods, scratching his beard. Seen many travellers on this road. Some pilgrims, some merchants, some just looking for a place the rain doesn't follow. He stares into the fire. Can't blame 'em. Outside, sheep bleat in sporadic unison. Less a chorus, more like a group rehearsal where no one knows the song. The shepherd listens for a moment before shaking his head. They're arguing again, he mutters. You raise an eyebrow. Arguing? Oh yes, he says seriously. They argue. All the time. Historians still argue whether sheep truly choose the most inconvenient places to stand or if that's just their nature. You try to smother a smile. He's not wrong. You can sleep for a bit, he continues. Won't bother you. Just don't let the hut cat in. She steals cheese and lies about it. You glance around. There's a cat. A soft thump sounds from the rafters above. Then two glowing eyes peer down at you with feline judgment so intense you feel mildly offended. The shepherd sighs. "That one," he mutters. "Demon in fur." The cat blinks once slowly as if confirming its villain status. You lie back on the straw, stretching out until your spine begins to settle. The warmth of the hut wraps around you gently. Crackling fire, distant sheep, murderous cat. Strangely comforting. And slowly the exhaustion catches up with you. But you don't sleep long. A shepherd's hut is many things, but quiet for extended periods is not one of them. A sudden panicked bleat erupts from outside. The shepherd snaps upright, grabs his crook, and marches out the door with the energy of a man who knows exactly which sheep is causing the trouble. You follow, rubbing sleep from your eyes. The flock stands in a loose cluster, staring accusingly at something near the fence. When you get closer, you see the cause. A single sheep has shoved its head through a gap in the fence and become stuck. Firmly stuck. Determinedly stuck. It bleats in outrage, as if the fence personally wronged it. The shepherd groans. "That one again." You help brace the sheep while he works the wooden slats apart. The sheep pops free with an undignified thwump and prances off like it did all the work. "Thanks," the shepherd mutters. "She does that 3 times a week." You grin. She seems committed. "She is," he says, "to chaos." You spend the next hour helping guide the flock to a fresh patch of hillside. It's surprisingly calming work, slow, steady, rhythmic. Sheep wander, you redirect. The sun warms your back. A breeze carries the scent of grass, and for once, nothing tries to attack you or examine your face with a cold nose. As evening settles in, the sky turns a gentle lavender. The shepherd leads you back to the hut, where the fire is rekindled and a pot of thick, steaming pottage bubbles quietly. He ladles some into a wooden bowl and hands it to you without ceremony. "You earned it," he says. You eat, gratefully. The pottage tastes like barley, onion, and the satisfaction of not being lost in the woods anymore. When the bowl is empty, the shepherd nods toward the straw pile. "Get sleep. Storm's coming tomorrow." You lie down again, pulling your wool scrap around your shoulders. Outside, the sheep settle, soft bleats fading into quiet. The cat jumps down from the rafters and curls near the fire, pretending it's not secretly plotting something. The hut creaks gently in the wind. The fire crackles. The shepherd snores lightly, and wrapped in warmth, straw, and the soft hum of hillside life, you drift peacefully into sleep, your first truly cozy rest in days. You wake to the scent of damp earth and the soft, persistent drumming of rain on thatch. It takes you a moment to understand why the sound feels so close. Then you remember. Shepherd's hut, storm coming, straw pillow, mildly demon-possessed cat. Right. You blink the sleep from your eyes and stretch, the straw rustling beneath you in a surprisingly pleasant way. Outside, the world is muted, wrapped in grey mist and rainfall. The shepherd moves quietly near the fire, stirring a pot of something that smells like oat porridge with a hint of resigned acceptance. He gives you a nod, then gestures toward the wooden bowl he's set aside for you. "Storm's worse than I thought," he mutters. "Best stay inside till it passes." You accept the bowl gratefully, blowing on the steaming surface. The hut is warm, the fire crackling confidently despite the weather's attempts to intimidate it. The cat lifts its head from its curled position by the fire and gives you a look that clearly says, "Don't drip on my floor," before returning to sleep. Rain hammers harder against the roof, steady, relentless. A mainstream fact drifts through your tired mind. Medieval travelers dreaded storms not just for the discomfort, but because roads became mud pits, tents flooded, and visibility dropped to, you might walk into a ditch and not know it until you're in the ditch. Historians still argue whether travelers preferred waiting storms out in huts and hostels, or risked shorter shelter stops to keep their momentum. As comforting as the hut is, you know you can't stay all day. Shepherd hospitality is finite, and you'd rather not stretch it thin. After finishing your porridge, you thank the shepherd, gather your things, and prepare to venture back into the rain-soaked world. Before you leave, the shepherd hands you a wool hood. "Borrow it," he says. "Keeps the worst off. Return it if you come back this way. If you don't, well, it'll keep you dry somewhere else." You place it over your head, a soft, slightly itchy blessing, and step outside into sheets of grey. The rain cools everything instantly, soaking the hillside in a silver haze. Sheep huddle together under a rocky overhang, watching you with lazy disinterest. The grass squishes under your boots, each step sinking just, slightly deeper than you'd prefer. You press onward, eyes narrowed against the drizzle. By late morning the storm weakens, slipping into a drizzle that feels almost polite. You follow the winding path back toward the valley, boots caked in mud, cloak damp but manageable. Eventually the road widens and flattens, and before long you spot a low timbered building ahead. A pilgrim hostel. You pause. It's small, humble in the way buildings become when too many people and too few repairs have passed through, but smoke rises from its chimney. A simple wooden sign marks it, a carved scallop shell, symbol of countless pilgrim routes. You've heard of places like this, not inns for profit but rough shelters where travellers, usually religious ones, could rest if they contributed work or prayer. You approach cautiously. Hostels are known to be strict, but they also tend to be warm. You rap your knuckles on the open door frame. Inside, the room is dim, lit by a single window and a hearth fire. A woman in a rough wool dress moves briskly between tables, stacking bowls with purpose. Her eyes flick up to you. "Traveller?" she asks. "Yes, passing through." You seek shelter, only if it's allowed. She studies you a moment. Your mud-streaked boots, your damp wool hood, your general aura of soggy perseverance. Then she nods toward a corner. "We offer space, but not freely. You'll work." You nod. "Of course." "Good," she replies, handing you a stack of firewood. "Bring this to the hearth, and don't drip too much." You carry the wood, arranging it carefully by the fire. The warmth hits you immediately, glorious enveloping heat that makes your skin tingle and your shoulders sag in relief. A few other travellers occupy the room, some older, some younger, all equally exhausted. One man sits repairing his sandal with twine. Another woman mends the hem of her cloak. A young boy traces patterns in the ashes by the hearth. As you finish your chore, the woman returns. You may rest a while. If you stay the night, you'll scrub the floors. Fair, you say. Floors in medieval hostels demanded constant attention. A quirky tidbit floats to mind. Travellers often tracked in half the countryside with them. Mud, straw, lost possessions, and in one recorded case, an extremely annoyed goose. Hostels therefore spent much of their time cleaning up after people whose shoes were more sponge than footwear. You settle onto a bench near the fire, stretching your legs under the table. A man across from you nods in greeting. "Long road?" he asks. "Long enough," you reply. He gestures to his bundle. "Pilgrimage, 3rd week on the road. Fell in a stream yesterday, nearly washed away." You chuckle softly. "I slept under a bridge last night." He winces in sympathy. "Ah, you win." The room smells of smoke, boiled grains and wet wool. You listen to murmured conversations, someone complaining about road tolls, another discussing a shrine further down the path, someone else worrying whether raiders have been near the coast. The hum of human tiredness fills the air, soft, honest, unvarnished. Near the hearth, a wooden bowl of warm broth waits for whoever wants it. You take a portion, cradling it between your hands. The warmth travels through you like sunlight, thawing everything the rain stiffened. As you eat, the woman in charge sits beside you. "Storm's passing," she says. "Road will dry by evening." "Good," you answer. "I'll move on once it does." She nods, then adds, "Many don't like this hostel. Too crowded, too strict. But it's safe. Always safer together than alone." "Agreed." She stands and moves on, organising blankets with quiet efficiency. You watch the fire dance, listening to the crackle and pop of burning wood. Travellers settle deeper into their seats. The boy by the hearth begins humming. The drizzle outside fades to nothing. You let your head rest against the wall, letting warmth sink into your bones. You could stay the night. You could sleep on a wooden cot, relatively dry, surrounded by other weary souls. But something tugs at you. A feeling that tonight, your road has another place in mind. The sky lightens outside, patches of blue emerging. You stand, stretch, and gather your things. The woman watches you with a knowing look. "Keep the hood," she says, "rain or no." "Thank you," you reply sincerely. You step out into the clearing air, the world washed clean by the storm. The road stretches ahead, glistening slightly, ready for your next set of footprints. And as you walk, the warmth of the hostel clings to you, steady as a lantern behind you. light you carry forward whether you sleep under a roof or beneath the stars. The mud sucks at your boots as you put distance between yourself and the pilgrim hostel, but the sky is clearing, streaks of sunlight pushing through the last stubborn clouds. The air feels washed, crisp, alive, almost like the world is apologizing for drenching you earlier. You pull the borrowed wool hood a little tighter anyway, because rain clouds have a nasty habit of returning as soon as you start trusting the weather again. The road bends around a cluster of fields, then rises gently toward a small walled town perched on a low ridge. You can already see the stone walls from here, mottled with lichen and patched in places where repairs outnumber original stones. A flag flutters lazily above the gate tower, a faded emblem, barely recognizable at this distance. A pair of crows argue loudly along the parapet, their squawks echoing down the slope as if they're criticizing the town's architectural choices. Your stomach growls again, louder this time, as though offended that the hostel didn't offer second breakfast. That's when you notice the faint scent of baking bread drifting from the town, carried on the wind like an irresistible invitation. Your feet pick up, speed even before you consciously decide to walk faster. The road narrows as it approaches the gate. A guard stands beneath the archway, leaning on a spear with the attitude of someone who has been bored since dawn and fully expects to remain bored until the sun goes down. He watches you approach with mild suspicion, which is honestly the friendliest expression a medieval guard can give an unfamiliar traveller. Purpose? He mutters mechanically. Passing through, you answer, looking for food and a place to rest. He gives a grunt that might be approval or indigestion, then gestures for you to enter. Don't cause trouble. As if I have the energy, you whisper. Inside, the town hums with evening activity. Narrow streets twist between timbered houses whose upper floors lean toward each other like they're gossiping. Vendors pack up their stalls, children chase each other through puddles, a baker tosses crumbs to a cluster of pigeons battling over every scrap. The smells hit you all at once: yeast, smoke, roasted onions, horse manure, a medieval perfume that's somehow comforting now. You wander through the streets, soaking in the warmth of human presence. But towns aren't friendly at night for travellers without coin. You can feel eyes on you, a shopkeeper's lingering glance, a guard patrolling with unnecessary intensity, a pair of boys whispering from a doorway. You're not unwelcome exactly, but you definitely don't belong. You chew the last of your stale bread, wishing it magically multiplied like in miracle stories. It doesn't. A mainstream fact pops into your mind. Medieval towns often enforce strict curfews, closing the gates at dusk to keep out thieves and, well, travellers like you. Those caught without lodging risked fines or, worse, being thrown out entirely. Historians still argue whether these rules were about safety or just towns flexing their authority muscles, which means if you don't secure a place soon, you might be sleeping outside the walls entirely. Your feet carry you toward the quieter edge of town, the place most locals ignore. As you round a corner near the wall's base, you spot it. A narrow, recessed nook built into the stone, probably intended for storage or repairs long ago. It's just deep enough for a person to sit, or lie curled up if that person is very tired and not picky. In other words, perfect. You approach the nook cautiously, checking for the usual obstacles. Rats, puddles, aggressive geese, carved symbols indicating this is where we dump chamber pots. But it's dry, sheltered, and hidden enough that only someone intentionally scanning the wall would spot you. You settle down carefully, leaning your back against the cool stone. The wall radiates faint leftover warmth from hours of sunlight. It feels almost comforting, like a giant stone blanket that isn't trying very hard but still counts. This little gap is your temporary home. The town's noises echo distantly, laughter, clinking pots, the shuffle of boots along cobblestones. You tuck your wool scrap around your shoulders and exhale slowly, letting the tension drain from your spine. You could drift off like this. You probably will. Then, footsteps. You stiffen. A pair of guards stroll past, their boots clicking with authority. You hold your breath, shrinking deeper into the shadows. The nook is dark enough that you're practically part of the wall, but your heartbeat refuses to get the memo and thumps loudly in your ears. One guard speaks, voice low and bored. Heard the Reeves' daughter try to sneak her cat into church again. The other snorts. Better behaved than half the congregation. Their conversation fades as they continue down the street. You let your breath out slowly, your pulse still racing. Hiding along a town wall isn't exactly illegal, but guards tend to assume anyone in shadows is either a thief or someone who doesn't want to pay for lodging. You are neither, but good luck explaining that when you're half asleep in a wall crevice. The sky darkens to deep blue. The town quiets. Lamps flicker behind shutters. Somewhere nearby, a dog howls at nothing in particular, perhaps mourning the lack of table scraps. Your eyes begin to droop. A sudden tap wakes you, a pebble bouncing near your foot. You sit up quickly. A child stands a few feet away, big-eyed and barefoot, hair sticking out like it lost a fight with a brush. He stares at you solemnly. "What are you doing in the wall?" he asks. You swallow. "Resting." He nods thoughtfully, as if this is an entirely reasonable activity. "My brother sleeps in the chimney sometimes when he hides from chores." You blink. Is that safe?" He shrugs. He's very small. Then he reaches into his pocket and hands you half a heel of bread before scampering off without another word. You stare at the bread, touched beyond measure. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Medieval children often wandered more freely than adults realized, collecting stories, oddities, and occasionally feeding strangers as if it were a normal hobby. You take a grateful bite. It's chewy, dense, perfect. The night deepens. Stars appear between the rooftops, tiny specks framed by timber beams and chimney smoke. The world cools around you. The stone wall's faint warmth fades but still shields you from the wind. You curl your knees to your chest, pulling your wool scrap closer. Your eyelids grow heavy. The day's exhaustion weighs on you like a soft, insistent hand. Footsteps pass occasionally. Drunken giggles, a late-working baker, a guard humming off-key. But no one notices you. No one disturbs you. Slowly the wall nook becomes a cocoon. Narrow, hard, imperfect, but safe. You drift into sleep. The cool stone at your back, the faint smell of bread lingering on your hands, and the feeling, just for tonight, that even the smallest cracks in a town can offer refuge to a weary traveller. You wake to the sound of distant gulls, not the pleasant kind that gently announce morning, but the shrieking, mildly judgmental kind that clearly believe everyone owes them breakfast. You blink yourself upright inside the nook, limbs stiff but intact, wool scrap clinging to your shoulders like it's reluctant to leave its post. Dawn spills across the town walls in thin streaks of pale gold, and for a moment, you wonder if the world was always this quiet, or if you've simply become the sort of traveller who notices silence more than anything else. Your stomach grumbles loudly. Right. Yesterday's half-heel from the chimney-climbing child didn't get you far. You stretch your legs, wincing as your joints crackle like logs on a low fire, and step back into the street. The town is waking. A baker opens his shutters with a yawn. A woman sweeps her doorstep with the speed of someone sweeping personal frustration out into the street. Smoke rises from chimneys, warm and promising. You inhale deeply. Bread, wood smoke, and the faint scent of something frying. If smells were currency, you'd be rich. You weave through the quieter lanes toward the town's gate, knowing you should leave before anyone asks why you spent the night lodged in the wall like a loose brick. The guards from last night are gone, replaced by two younger ones who appear far more interested in comparing boots than scanning travellers. You slip past them easily and step onto the open road once more. It feels good to have sky above you again. The road curves away from the town and descends toward a river valley. From this height, you can see the faint glimmer of water ahead, wide, slow-moving, embracing the land like a silver ribbon. The day is warming fast, the air thick with summer humidity that clings to your clothes. You quicken your pace, hoping the riverbank might offer some shade, and maybe, if the fates are kind, the remains of an old campfire. As you draw closer, the fields thin into scrub and reeds. A narrow footpath winds down toward the river, well trodden by fishermen, washerwomen, and the occasional traveller looking for a place to rest. You follow it, boots skidding slightly on the slope, until the river opens before you, broad, calm, reflecting the powder blue sky above. And there, nestled among the reeds, you see them, old fire pits, 3 of them in fact, rings of stones, charred bits of wood, a few leftover shards of broken pottery. Proof that countless wanderers came here before you, drawn by the water and the soft banks. You approach the nearest pit and crouch down, embers long dead. But the stones are warm, not from fire but from sunlight. You let your hand rest on one, feeling that heat sink into your palm. A small comfort, but real. A mainstream historical fact floats into your mind. Riverbanks were some of the most common resting spots for poor medieval travellers. Easy access to water, soft ground, reeds for makeshift bedding, and enough openness to spot trouble from a distance. Historians still argue whether travellers preferred these spots because they were safe or simply because they were free. You settle onto the grass, stretching your legs. The river murmurs softly beside you, its current weaving around stones with a gentle hush-hush that makes your eyelids grow heavy. You dip your hands into the cool water, splashing your face. Goosebumps immediately race up your arms. Refreshing, bracing, possibly ill-advised. You sigh and lean back against a smooth patch of earth. The sun warms your eyelids, and for a moment you feel your body sinking toward a nap. A good nap. The kind where nothing pokes you, stalks you, or sniffs your face at dawn. But before you drift off fully, you hear movement, footsteps in the reeds. You sit up quickly, heart skipping. A man emerges, a wiry fellow in worn leather shoes and a cloak patched more times than cloth remains. His eyes are sharp but not unfriendly. He nods toward you in the universal traveller greeting of "I won't bother you unless you bother me." "Morning," he says, lowering himself near another fire pit. "You resting?" "Trying to," you say, offering a tired smile. He chuckles. "River's good for that. Safe enough too, except for the lads who come around looking for dropped coins." He taps his side. "Keep things close." You instinctively check your bag. Everything's still there. Good. He begins arranging twigs in his fire pit with practiced ease. Storm washed everything clean, even the prints, makes it look like new ground. You nod, watching him work. His movements are rhythmic, reassuring. He squints at you. "Heading far?" "Just on the road," you reply. "Looking for shelter when it comes." "Aye." He pokes the twigs thoughtfully. "We all are." The river glints, catching sunlight like scattered coins on the surface. A small fish leaps, making a soft splash. Frogs croak in the reeds like they're discussing the weather. You draw your knees up, resting your chin atop them. There's something comforting about the quiet companionship of another traveller, even without conversation. Just knowing someone else chose this same patch of ground makes it feel less lonely. The man finishes arranging his fire and sits back. "Used to pass a trading post farther south," he says casually. "Merchants let me sleep under their porch a few times. If you're heading that way, keep an eye for their carved sign, pair of crossed keys." You tuck the information away. "Thank you." He nods again, satisfied. You glance at the riverbank fire pits around you, imagining all the hands that collected firewood here, all the weary bodies that lay on this same grass, all the hushed conversations shared by the glow of dying flames. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some medieval travellers believed river spirits guarded sleeping wanderers, nudging away snakes or warning of thieves. Others swore rivers stole dreams from sleepers and returned them twisted. Opinions, as always, varied. A dragonfly buzzes past your ear, glittering green. It hovers for a moment before darting away. A soft breeze ripples the water. Your body grows drowsy again, the steady river song tugging at the edges of consciousness. You lie back fully, arms folded over your chest, letting the soft earth cradle you. The sun warms your skin. The river cools the air. The world hums in quiet harmony. And for the first time in days, maybe longer, you feel the kind of relaxation that doesn't require constant vigilance. The water's murmur mixes with your slow breathing, the breeze threading through the reeds like a whispered lullaby. Your thoughts drift, your muscles soften, and there, by the riverbank fire pits used by generations of wanderers before you, your tired body finally surrenders. You fall asleep to sunlight and water, two ancient guardians keeping watch until you wake again. You wake to sunlight warming your face and the river whispering its endless, soothing monologue beside you. For a moment you forget where you are, just the soft grass beneath you, the glint of water, the distant croak of a very opinionated frog. Then your stomach growls like a displeased bear and jolts you back to reality. Right, you're still travelling, still hungry, still in possession of exactly zero plans beyond don't sleep in a river. You sit up slowly, brushing reeds off your clothes. The other traveller from earlier is already gone, his fire pit neatly arranged, leaving behind only a few footprints in the softened earth. The sky's clear now, deep blue with lazy strands of white cloud drifting like sheep who finally decided to behave. You stretch until your spine pops, then follow the dirt path southward, remembering what the traveller told you: a trading post with a porch, a carved sign of crossed keys, and, hopefully, a place to rest if you arrive before the merchants decide porch closed, no wanderers. The walk isn't long, but it's warm. The sun presses against your back, urging sweat from your forehead. Your boots scuff the dusty path, raising little puffs that cling to your legs. Occasionally, a grasshopper jumps directly into your way like it's trying to file a complaint about your presence. Eventually, the road widens. A handful of small fields appear, fringed with low fences, and there, just ahead, you see it. A trading post sturdier than most medieval structures, with wide timber walls, a slanted roof thick with thatch, and a raised porch that casts a wide, inviting shadow. The carved sign of crossed keys hangs beside the doorway, swaying gently in the breeze. Two merchants sit on stools under the porch overhang, one mending a sack, the other counting coins with the resigned expression of someone who suspects half of them are counterfeit. You approach cautiously, hands visible, posture harmless. The universal body language of "I'm a traveller, not a problem." The coin counting, merchant looks up. His eyebrows rise a little, but his expression stays unreadable. "Need something?" he asks. "Just a place to rest," you answer honestly. "Shade for a bit. I can help with chores." The second merchant snorts softly but doesn't disagree. He gestures toward the porch. "Sit. We'll see what work we have." You murmur your thanks and settle into the cool shade. It's bliss. Absolute bliss. Your shoulders relax for the first time since, well, possibly ever. The porch boards beneath you are smooth but sturdy, worn by decades of boots and goods being dragged across them. The faint smell of grain, spices and dried fish lingers in the air, a strangely comforting blend. A mainstream historical fact nudges your thoughts. Trading posts were vital rest points in medieval travel networks, acting as hubs where goods, news and exhausted bodies all pass through. Historians still argue whether these posts were more important for commerce or for keeping travellers alive long enough to reach the next town. The merchant hands you a crate. If you can stack these inside, tidy-like, you've earned yourself an hour on the porch. He pauses. "Don't drop them. Last traveller dropped them. We remember." You stand, lift the crate, and immediately wish it weighed 5 pounds less. Still, you carry it inside, stacking it beside a row of already organised goods. You sweep a section of the floor, tie 2 loose bundles of flax, and help move a barrel 3 inches to the left because apparently that matters. When you're done, the merchant nods with grudging approval. "Not bad," he says. "Sit as long as you like, but don't block the doorway, and don't feed the dog." You blink. "Dog?" As if summoned by prophecy, a medium-sized dog appears from behind a barrel, scruffy, cheerful, and clearly accustomed to wandering wherever it pleases. It trots toward you, tail wagging with hopeful intensity. "Don't feed him," the merchant repeats, louder this time. You pat your pockets. "I don't have food anyway." "That's why he likes travellers," the merchant mutters. The dog lies beside you anyway, pressing its warm side against your leg. You laugh quietly. "I won't feed you," you whisper, "but you can share my shade." The dog closes its eyes, content. You lean back against a support beam, letting the breeze brush over your face. The world feels still here. Light chatter drifts from inside the trading post. Chickens cluck somewhere behind the building, sounding disgruntled about absolutely nothing. For a long, peaceful stretch, you do nothing but breathe. The porch creaks with the gentle movement of the merchants. A fly buzzes lazily in the warm air, doing its best impression of a drunk bee. Your eyelids grow heavy. But before sleep fully claims you, voices drift from inside. "Merchant caravan should pass soon," one says, "if they're early this season." "Or bandits slowed them again," the other replies. Historians still argue whether this stretch of road is cursed or just badly managed. You smother a grin. Medieval gossip is always either wildly exaggerated or depressingly true, and somehow both at once. The breeze shifts. You pull your wool scrap around your shoulders, lean sideways and watch the road while half dozing. Dog warmth, porch shade, gentle wind. The kind of moment weary travellers call a treasure. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some merchants let travellers sleep under their porches because it deterred thieves. Extra bodies meant extra noise, and extra noise meant fewer stolen sacks of grain. In that sense, you're less a guest and more a highly affordable security system. The thought almost makes you laugh. The merchants step outside eventually, lifting crates and adjusting harnesses for their small pack animals. The dog sits up, ears perked, tail swishing hopefully. One merchant glances your way. "Storm might come back tonight," he says. "If you need a space under the porch, take it. Just keep to the far side. And," he adds sternly, "don't let the dog steal dried fish again." The dog looks personally offended. You nod gratefully. A place to sleep, an actual offered one, not stolen by necessity, is a rare gift. Evening drifts in slowly, warm gold turning to pink, then purple. The trading post closes its doors. The merchants murmur their good nights. The dog curls nearby. The air cools just enough to make your blankets scrap welcome. You lie down beneath the porch, on a patch of packed earth smoothed by years of boots. The overhang shelters you from the sky, the walls guard your sides, and the dog settles just close enough to provide company without crowding. Crickets begin their nighttime chorus. Fireflies blink in the grasses. The world softens around the edges. You exhale, long and slow. Tonight, for the first time in a while, you're not hiding, not wedged into stone, not braving wind, foxes, or collapsing mills. You're sheltered, lightly watched over, at rest. Sleep takes you gently, soft as the breeze, steady as the porch above you, and the road waits quietly for you to return in the morning. Morning on the trading post porch arrives with the soft thump-thump of someone hefting crates inside. You wake slowly, blinking at beams of sunlight slipping through the porch boards overhead like shy golden ribbons. The dog from last night is already awake, sitting upright beside you with the posture of a guard who didn't actually guard anything but wants credit anyway. It yawns loudly, one of those full-body, tongue-curling yawns, and nudges your elbow as if to say, "Up, important business," like eating things. You stretch, feeling pleasantly stiff instead of painfully stiff, a rare upgrade. The earth beneath you is cool but not damp, and for once no fox is examining your face. Progress. The merchants give you a nod as you dust yourself off. One tosses a casual, "safe travels" your way, and the other firmly instructs the dog, "Leave the traveller alone," which the dog immediately ignores by following you halfway down the road. You pat its head, give it a fond goodbye, and finally continue on. The day warms gently, the sky painted with streaky clouds that seem committed to drifting exactly nowhere. Your legs find an easy rhythm. Ahead, the landscape shifts subtly. Fields, then scattered copses of trees, then long, sloping meadows. The road bends lazily toward a cluster of larger buildings in the distance, and there, emerging like a small stone island in the sea of fields, is your next potential shelter, a manor estate. Not a castle, but not a farmhouse either. The main manor house stands proud and blocky, its stone walls thick, its narrow windows glinting in the light. Surrounding it are outbuildings, barns, workshops, sheds, a long granary, and a low stone wall encircling the entire plot. You slow your steps. Manors can be opportunities, or trouble. Lords are unpredictable creatures like swans with lands and taxes. But stewards, stewards, are practical folk. They run the estate, keep the books, organize the workers, and sometimes allow a weary traveller to sleep in an outbuilding if chores are done and intentions seem honest. You approach the gate cautiously. A pair of geese wander nearby, staring at you with the cold, calculating menace only geese can muster. You give them a wide berth. Inside the low wall, workers move briskly about. You spot a few labourers repairing a fence, a woman hauling baskets of herbs, and two boys trying, and failing, to convince a mule to stand up. The estate hums with purposeful energy, each person a cog in a machine far more organised than the wandering chaos you live in. You stop near a copperage shed, where a man is hammering iron hoops onto a half-finished barrel. He glances up, wiping sweat from his brow. "Need something?" he asks, tone neutral. "A bit of rest," you say, "and willing hands if work's needed." He eyes you, taking in your boots, your travel-worn cloak, your general aura of "I survived a fox at dawn." After a moment, he nods toward the main outbuilding near the granary. "Talk to the steward. He's the one who decides who sleeps where." You thank him and head that way. The steward stands beside the doorway, tall and tidy in a way that suggests he has opinions about punctuality. He's speaking sternly to a young worker about broken buckets when he notices you waiting. He dismisses the boy, who scurries away like a startled rabbit. "Yes?" the steward asks. "State your business." "I'm travelling," you say, "and seeking a place to rest for the night. I can work." He studies you with the sort of gaze that could sort grain from chaff. Then, slowly he nods. "We do not give charity, but we exchange labour for shelter." "That's fair." He gestures toward a large storage hut near the rear of the grounds. "You can earn a yas's corner in that outbuilding. You'll sweep floors, fetch water, and help repair a broken gate hinge. If you work well, you stay. If not, you go." You nod immediately. "Understood. Good. Start with the water barrels." And so begins your tenure as one of many temporary manor helpers. You haul water from the estate's well, deep, echoing, and far heavier than your ambitions. You sweep grain dust out of cracks in the granary. You carry wood to the kitchen house, where cooks shout directions while waving spoons like weapons. You help repair that hinge, holding the iron steady while the blacksmith hammers it back into place, with the confidence of a man who believes everything can be fixed by hitting it harder. As you work, you catch glimpses of manor life. Children chase each other between the buildings. A pair of maids chat while hanging linens. The lord himself appears briefly near the main house, dressed in fine wool, inspecting something on the lawn before disappearing again like a rare bird who refuses to be observed for long. A mainstream historical fact bubbles up. Manorial estates were economic pillars of medieval rural life, centres of labour, governance, harvests, and occasionally, refuge for travellers who didn't annoy the steward. Historians still argue whether manors offered hospitality out of obligation, practicality, or because an extra set of hands was always useful during busy seasons. By late afternoon, your muscles burn and your throat feels dusty, but the steward approaches, inspecting your work. "You've done well," he says at last. "You'll sleep in the outbuilding tonight." Relief washes over you like cool well water. The outbuilding is humble, stone foundation, timber walls, thatch roof, but sturdy. Inside, bales of straw line one wall stacked neatly. Tools hang from hooks. A few crates sit in corners. It smells of grain and dry earth and something mildly goat-flavoured, which is basically the default scent of rural medieval life. You settle onto a cleared patch of straw, the steward points out. It's soft enough, warm enough, and sheltered enough to feel like luxury. The sun dips low, painting the horizon in tones of rosy gold and smoky lavender. Workers head inside for supper. The air cools, cicadas starting their evening chorus. Somewhere nearby, a cow moos dramatically, clearly upset about something trivial. You lie back, exhaling deeply. A quirky tidbit floats to mind. Some travellers claimed manors were the safest places to sleep because the walls kept danger out. Others insisted manors were full of ghosts, former workers, unlucky soldiers, or nobles who had unfinished business. You smile to yourself. After foxes, wolves, bridges, geese, and collapsed mills, a ghost sounds almost polite. Night settles gently. The outbuilding grows dim except for a bit of moonlight slipping through a high gap in the wall. Nearby, another worker snores softly, steady, rhythmic, strangely soothing. A mouse rustles somewhere in the straw but keeps its distance, as mice with survival instincts tend to do. Your body sinks deeper into the straw, warm, safe, fed just enough, sheltered by solid walls. And as the manor quiets, the air cooling into a gentle stillness, you feel sleep gather around you like a soft cloak. Your breathing slows, your limbs relax. The straw cradles you like a real bed might. And beneath the humble roof of a manor outbuilding, earned through effort and luck, you drift into peaceful, quiet rest. You wake before dawn, long before dawn actually, to the sound of someone sneezing so violently it echoes off the outbuilding walls like a trumpet blast. For a moment you lie there in the straw, disoriented, wondering if a horse has learned to sneeze indoors. But no, it's just the other worker, rolling over with a groan before resuming the kind of snoring that could guide ships in fog. A pale band of pre-morning light glows through the gap in the wall. It's the hour when night hasn't quite left and morning hasn't quite decided to start its shift. Your bones ache in a familiar, stubborn way, but your body feels rested enough to move. Straw clings to your clothes in that affectionate, clingy way straw always does. You sit up, stretch, crack 3 joints you didn't know you had, and you feel it, that heavy, warm pull towards staying in your cozy straw pocket just a little longer. But the steward had said workers wake early, and the manor is already stirring. A faint clatter of buckets outside, the distant lowing of cows demanding their morning attention, and a rooster crowing with the unearned confidence of someone who did nothing to contribute yesterday. You gather your things quietly and slip outside into the cool dawn. Mist hugs the ground, swirling around your boots as you walk. The manor looks different in this early hour. Quieter, softer, almost kind. Smoke rises from the kitchen house chimney, carrying the scent of bread dough being coaxed awake by warm coals. Workers shuffle about like ghosts reluctantly returning to mortal duties. One of them, a girl carrying kindling, gives you a small nod. "Steward said you're heading on today," she says. "Road's safe this morning." Safe is a generous word. The road is rarely safe, but it's easier when the world is brightening. "Thank you," you say softly. You cross the main courtyard, the ground still damp from night air, and step beyond the manor gate. The road ahead glows faintly gold at its edges, the sky beginning its slow shift from ink to blue. You feel that familiar tug, travel calling you forward, even though part of you wants nothing more than a second breakfast. As you walk, the world wakes around you. Birds chirp lazily, dew sparkles across fields, a hare darts across the path as though late for an appointment, and you, in your travel-worn boots, feel the rhythm of the journey settle back into your bones. But there's something else today. Fatigue. A deep, lingering tiredness that clings to your limbs no matter how many steps you take. Last night's rest helped, yes, but days and days of travel accumulate quietly, like invisible stones in your pack. The sun rises fully now, painting the world in warm light. Sweat beads against your hairline. You tug your hood back, letting the breeze cool your face. The road winds lazily across low hills, each crest revealing more fields, more sky, more proof that the world is very large and you're very small and very tired. By mid-morning, the warmth becomes almost heavy. You slow your pace, squinting at the horizon. You're searching, not consciously, for shade, for shelter, for anything to lean against while your legs remember how to function. But the road becomes more open, the trees more scattered. Finally, at the edge of a small wooded dip, you spot a lone oak tree. Wide trunk, generous branches, the kind of tree that looks like it has seen things and does not intend to discuss them. Beneath it lies a patch of grass flattened by past travellers. The sight sparks a sigh from your chest, the kind that sounds like relief wearing a heavy coat. You step beneath the oak, grateful for the shade's cool embrace. The wind rustles the leaves overhead, whispering secrets in a language you almost understand. You sink onto the ground, leaning your back against the trunk's sturdy bark. Your entire body seems to exhale. The warmth of dawn lingers in the air. Your eyelids grow heavy, not sleepy exactly, but weighted by the promise of a moment's peace. A mainstream historical fact floats up. Medieval travellers often rested in dappled shade just off the road, especially during long summer walks. Shade offered safety from heatstroke and visibility from a distance. Historians still argue whether travellers preferred open, visible spots or tucked-away hollows, balancing safety from strangers with safety from nature. You tilt your head back. Sunlight filters through the leaves in shifting gold-green patterns. Birds hop along the nearby brush, occasionally pausing to stare at you like you've intruded on a woodland meeting. One bird chirps a rapid series of notes that sounds vaguely offended. "I'm just resting," you whisper. A squirrel scrambles down the trunk above you, pauses, then flicks its tail in a decisive humph before retreating. Woodland creatures are clearly unionized in their judgment. Your thoughts drift, slow and warm like honey. You think about last night's straw bed, the cozy fire, the safe walls. You think about the riverbank, the trading post dog, the fox under the bridge, the shepherd's hut and its malevolent cat. You think about how many places you've slept, how many corners, crevices, shadows, barns, porches and hides have become temporary homes. And for the first time in a while, you let yourself simply be still. The breeze deepens, grass whispers around your boots. Far down the road, a wagon creaks past, its driver barely noticing you in the shade. You close your eyes, not to sleep, just to rest, just for a moment. But moments have a way of stretching when exhaustion is heavy. Your head dips once, twice. Footsteps crunch lightly on the road. You open your eyes blearily to see an older woman walking with a basket slung on her arm. She glances at you, but doesn't stop. "Tired, are you?" she asks kindly. "Very," you admit. She smiles softly. "The day is long, but the morning will carry you farther than you think. Don't tarry too long, you'll lose the cool hours." Then she continues on, her shadow shrinking down the road. You sit up, rubbing your eyes. She's right. Rest is precious. But linger too long, and the sun becomes your enemy. You pull yourself to your feet, slowly, reluctantly, like lifting a body made of river stones. The oak's shade feels like a second home trying to keep you for itself. But you shoulder your bag, take a deep breath, and step back onto the road. Morning is turning to noon. The path gleams faintly before you, and though your body aches and your eyelids still tug toward rest, you push onward, toward one final shelter before this long journey winds down. The last leg awaits. By midday the sun hangs high overhead, bright, relentless, a polished coin hammered flat across the sky. The road shimmers with heat, and each step feels like you're dragging your boots through invisible syrup. But you keep going, because you always keep going, and because somewhere ahead, just a little farther, there has to be a place to rest. One last shelter before day gives up and hands the whole world over to night. You follow the path as it weaves between gentle hills. Tall grasses sway, whispering in a dry rustle. A distant farmhouse sits atop a ridge, its red-tiled roof catching the light like a guiding ember. But farms mean chores, and right now your arms feel like boiled noodles. So you continue, choosing instead the open, honest embrace of the roadside. The breeze shifts, carrying the faint smell of pine and distant wood smoke, a hopeful sign. The path bends, dips, and finally levels out beside a quiet stretch surrounded by low shrubs and wild mint. And there, just ahead, you see it. A crumbled, time-worn shelter of stones low to the ground, almost swallowed by vines. It's not quite a hut, not quite a ruin, but something in between. 3 walls remain. A sagging timber beam forms a partial roof. Inside, scattered straw suggests someone, or several someones, used it recently. Your heart lifts a little. This is exactly the kind of place poor medieval travellers sought at the end of a long, bone-deep, weary day, abandoned enough that no one will chase you off, intact enough to keep the wind from sneaking its icy fingers under your clothes. You step closer, pushing aside a branch. As you duck inside, the temperature drops pleasantly, a pocket of shade that wraps around your skin like cool water. A small patch of earth near the back is dry, miraculously dry, and you immediately claim it with your bag. Outside, the world hums a slow, hot afternoon tune. Bees drifting lazily from flower to flower, grasshoppers snapping through grass, the faint creak of branches shifting overhead. You breathe it in, letting your body sink into the calm of the moment. A mainstream historical fact nudges your memory. Roadside shelters, sometimes nothing more than half-fallen huts or stone lean-tos, were lifelines for the poor. They weren't maintained. They weren't owned. They simply existed, scattered like quiet promises along worn paths. Historians still argue whether communities built them intentionally or if they remained by sheer accident. But either way, travellers like you depended on them. You sit, stretch your aching legs, and try to ignore how loudly your feet complain. The shade soothes them almost instantly. Even the breeze seems gentler now, cooler, as if the world approves of your choice. But you don't lie down yet. Not quite. There's a ritual to ending a long day on the road. Checking surroundings, settling your pack, making sure no snakes or overly curious hedgehogs have claimed the corners. You scan the space. Nothing but old straw, a few pebbles, and a beetle marching across the dirt with important beetle business. Satisfied, you lean back and let your spine rest against the warm stone wall. A quirky tidbit floats to mind. Some medieval travellers left tiny marks or carved initials in shelters like this, as both a record and a charm, proof they passed safely, and a hopeful wish that the next wanderer would too. You search the stones behind you and find faint scratches. Initials, symbols, a tiny drawing of what might be a fish Or a lumpy shoe? Hard to tell. Your eyelids grow heavy. You exhale long and slow. Distantly you hear footsteps, light, unhurried. You raise your head just enough to peek out. A young woman walks along the road, basket on her hip, humming softly. When she sees you in the shelter, she smiles. "Rest well, traveller," she calls gently. "Good shade today." You return the smile. "Thank you." She continues on, humming, fading into the warm air. You settle deeper into the shelter. The wind stirs, lifting your hair slightly. Straw whispers under your weight. Your limbs loosen. Finally, completely. This is it. The last rest spot on your long journey. The final quiet pocket before the world shifts again into whatever comes next. You close your eyes. The road's dust settles inside your lungs like memory. Your breath deepens. Your shoulders soften. And as warmth fades into cool shadow, sleep begins to draw around you like a long, peaceful dusk. And now, we slow everything down. The road quiets. The wind hushes. The old shelter around you, cracked stone, warm earth, soft straw, seems to breathe with you, rising gently as your chest rises, falling softly as your breath eases out. Every sound melts into the distance. The faint rustle of grass, the muted hum of insects, the low whisper of the breeze weaving through leaves. They all settle into a single, calming rhythm, unhurried and effortless. You feel your body growing heavier in the best way, like the day itself is finally letting go of you, loosening its grip, allowing your muscles to sink deeper into the cool, forgiving earth beneath you. Your hands relax first, then your arms, then your shoulders, melting in slow warm waves. Your jaw unclenches without you even noticing. Your eyelids soften just a fraction, then a little more and a little more still. Your breath becomes slow, smooth, quiet. The world outside blurs into soft shapes, golden light fading at the edges, shadows stretching out like long, gentle sighs. Nothing is urgent now, nothing is sharp. Even the memories of the road, barn lofts, mill wheels, fox noses, campfires by the commons, drift farther away, becoming soft, harmless stories settling to the bottom of a still pond. You're safe here, sheltered, held, unhurried. Let the last warmth of the day glow faintly across your skin. Let the hush of the shelter wrap around you like a blanket worn by countless travellers before you. Let your breath fall into that slow, steady pattern that feels like resting on the edge of sleep, drifting in that quiet space where dreams begin to unfurl gently, like cotton. And with one final exhale, long and calm, you ease into stillness.